In his dark office, Ono Tadashi is in despair, resenting why, even in the 21st century, he has to deal with these disgusting paper documents. He glances at the clock, its hands indicating the late hour, and he worries whether he will even make it in time for the last train home. The main character was about to leave, but suddenly his attention is drawn to the glow of the monitor. A beautiful natural landscape shines on the screen, and he thoughtfully imagines how a quiet rural life with its peace and simplicity could give him the peace he dreams of. His heart clenches with longing, but suddenly he snaps out of it, remembering the train, and hastily mumbles that if he doesn't leave immediately, he risks not getting home at all that night. Suddenly, boxes of papers fall on him with a crash. He screams in surprise, swears, and the entire heavy pile of documents falls on him, pressing him down. Looking at his own blood on his hands, he bitterly realizes the injustice, asking himself why he had to stay to work overtime today. And at the same time, he realizes that even if he calls someone, no one will come to help. Looking up at the table with the computer, he says in despair that he will not be able to catch the last train. The guy reaches for the phone, trying to make a call, but quickly realizes the futility of this step, because to others he is no more than a shadow. His gaze falls again on the monitor with the image of agriculture. He notes with admiration that the picture reminds him of the end of everything. It gets dark before his eyes, and consciousness begins to gradually fade. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself in a strange, unknown place. A voice calls him a lost soul, and a beautiful girl appears before him. She greets him, explains that this is the Avesta, and calls herself the goddess of beginnings, Arya. Confused, Tadashi asks to wait. The goddess gently clarifies that he has not yet understood what is happening. She explains that he was brought into the world by Esther after dying on Earth. Tadashi is stunned to realize the truth and, clenching his fists, thinks that this was truly a senseless death. Looking around, he can't believe his eyes and wonders if this is paradise. But then he remembers Arya's words about another world. The goddess tells him that he has been given a chance to be reborn and start over in a new reality. Tadashi is surprised and asks again. She confirms her words and adds that this is a unique opportunity to live life a second time. His soul is extremely pure, so he is worthy of blessings. She raises her hands and loudly calls on the gods to respond to her request. The majestic gods appear before him. Arya explains that they are her family, the 12 gods of the Avesta, and informs him that he himself has the right to choose one of them to receive a blessing. He looks around them, noting the diversity, until he suddenly notices an old grandfather. The young man approaches the old man in the hat, asks for forgiveness and addresses him. The old man first asks questions, and then introduces himself as Kronos, the god of agriculture. The hero exclaims in shock, not believing his ears, and asks the old man again. The grandfather suddenly turns away and declares that he will say nothing more, urging the young man to leave. He adds that he will probably find forestry a boring occupation and will not want to accept such a blessing for a new life in the other world. The old man continues and says that if a boy aspires to heroism, he is better off turning to the god of heroes, or choosing the wise goddess Mia, whose power will bring glory and greatness. He notes that today sages are especially popular, because their magic is limitless. With Mia's blessing, he could master magic. However, the young man denies this and frankly admits that he is closer to agriculture, no matter how strange it may sound. The old man stops in shock and asks if he is really serious, if he has been listening carefully. The boy firmly replies that he has always dreamed of spending his life in a quiet village, and the blessing of the god of agriculture is perfect for him. Rumpus, surprised, still doesn't believe it, and asks awkwardly if he really wants it. He adds that if he dreams of becoming a master, a volcanic god would be a better fit. Then the boy asks Kronos what exactly he can give. The god of agriculture, delighted by the question, explains that the very essence of the agricultural world is not only plowing the fields, but also forestry, fishing, animal husbandry, brewing, cooking, crafts. This list can go on and on. The hero listened carefully and resolutely declares that he trusts himself in him, addressing the old man with the words, "Mr. Kronos." Hearing this, the grandfather suddenly cannot hold back his tears. The boy asks in confusion if he is crying because of his words. The grandfather replies that he cannot hold back his tears because 10,000 years have passed since the creation of the world. More than 2,000 souls have passed through this place, and for the first time someone has chosen agriculture. The hero asks in surprise if this is true. Kronos, coming to his senses, admits that he hasn't even asked his name yet. The protagonist introduces himself as Ono Tadashi. The old man nods approvingly and says that it's a beautiful name. He is still surprised by the boy's choice and almost incredulously remarks that it is strange to be reborn and start farming. But he immediately adds that the young man will definitely not regret it, and then turns to Arya. The goddess curiously asks what the matter is. The old man declares that he will never have such an opportunity again and therefore has a request, even if it costs him his life. He asks Arya to transfer all of his powers to Ono Tadashi. The goddess solemnly replies that she understands him. Kronos turns to the young man and says that he gives him all his power. At that moment, a glow flashes around him. The boy looks at his hand in amazement and asks what this strange mark is. He is explained that it is a sign that proclaims him the chosen savior of the world. He carefully examines the symbol that has appeared on his hand. It is a blessing from the god of agriculture, the 7 stars. And at that moment, someone shouts loudly to old Kronos, demanding that he stop and wait. The god of heroes and the goddess of wisdom, Mia, appear before them. She sternly demands an explanation and declares that he has gone mad, as it is strictly forbidden to give a person 7 stars. Kronos indignantly asks why she is interfering and urges her to look more closely. He ironically asks what the rules are. The god of heroes replies that he does not object, but people have always been given a maximum of only 5 stars. Mia supports him, sternly adding that even if it's just farming, giving a person 7 stars is unacceptable. She reminds him that the laws of this world are unchangeable, and even Miss Arya won't allow them to be broken with impunity. The protagonist turns to Arya with doubt and asks if this is really so. But the old man, angry, abruptly cuts him off, ordering him to shut up and just listen to his words. The grandfather sternly orders them to be quiet and emphasizes that agriculture is the foundation of human life. Arya intervenes and asks to be listened to, explaining that there are reasons for everything. She turns to the goddess of wisdom and reveals the truth. The world is on the verge of destruction. She adds that in that case, Avesta will be doomed. Mia falls silent in embarrassment, her face filled with confusion, as she finds no arguments in response to what was said. Arya continues, saying that this world is underdeveloped, with most of its inhabitants still fighting over territory, despite the widespread hunger and poverty. She asks Mia how many people she has blessed since 2024, and she hesitantly answers, about 533. Arya then turns to Helcobalt, clarifying that he has endowed at least 800 people, hasn't he? The god of heroes confirms her words and does not deny them, acknowledging the truth. Arya goes on to say that in rare cases, 4 humans have been transformed into dragons by receiving the blessings of the monster god. 24 more have become demon lords under the tutelage of Diabel, the demon god, and 6 master blacksmiths have received a gift from Vulcan. At the same time, she emphasizes that Tadashi was the first to choose the god of agriculture. His power is not combat, so even 7 stars won't make him a warrior, but their essence is completely different. Arya says that the more food there is in this world, the better it will become. But Mia sharply replies that no matter how much she explains, she will not accept it. She looks at the young man with contempt, asks if he is really Ono Tadashi, and he answers in the affirmative, wondering what will happen next. The goddess asks him why he doesn't choose someone else now. She emphasizes that his soul is great, and he deserves more than simple farming. Kronos is indignant, and the girl wonders what the problem is. Kronos turns to Mia and Helcobalt, but suddenly stops and remembers that the main character needs tools, so it's worth turning to Vulcan. He says that he vouches for Tadashi because he gave him a blessing. Mia is indignant and asks who he thinks he is. The god of agriculture solemnly declares that this boy is the hope of the world. He adds that the monsters are too strong, and even with his blessing, Tadashi will remain weak in battle. One gift is not enough. Mia replies that this cannot be, because no one has had multiple blessings. The old man accuses her of pettiness and emphasizes that in order to survive in the Avesta, a young man must fight. He turns to the god of heroes and asks if he agrees, since it is for the sake of saving the world. The god apologizes and refuses. The god of agriculture falls to his knees, surprising everyone. The hero exclaims in surprise, because gods should not bow to each other. The old man explains that he is too weak, and this is the only thing he can give Tadashi. Secretly, Helcobalt thinks that Kronos has gone too far. Finally, the god of heroes hesitantly agrees and asks Kronos to raise his head. He declares that he gives the hero his blessing, exactly 1 star. He reaches out and asks Tadashi to touch it, and a glow flashes around him. Then Kronos turns to Vulcan, saying that it is his turn now. Vulcan replies that he agrees with Kronos, but he cannot even give 1 star. He asks what the problem is, and turns to Tadashi. The guy dejectedly thinks that his position is very low, but replies in agreement. God explains that by granting blessings, they are strengthening their own faith through the Chosen One, and therefore must take a return from him. The hero apologizes in confusion and says that he has no money. Vulcan pauses in surprise, then laughs loudly, calling him funny. Vulcan says that the fee is not money, it can be taken later. It could be a simple shrine or altar. The boy immediately understands and thinks that this is a place of worship. The god of forging jokingly adds that he would prefer to receive quality wine and delicious food, but at the same time emphasizes that the young man is the first to choose agriculture. Tadashi sincerely thanks him and, turning to the god of heroes, asks what he wishes for. God replies that he would not like to give the blessing at all. Tadashi is surprised and says that he can take it back if he wants, but he just sighs, says that the young man is well-mannered and should forget about it, because it is not just a gift. In the finale, he adds that the main thing is not to taint the heart. The goddess of the beginning turns to the hero and asks if he is ready. He nods seriously and sincerely thanks her. Arya says that now he must preserve the blessings he has been given in the mortal world. She smiles gently, wishing him a happy life. The boy looks at her in confusion, and the next moment she snaps her fingers. The young man finds himself among white clouds, screams loudly in surprise. Trees appear before his eyes, and a second later his body hits the ground sharply. He looks around in amazement and exclaims, asking where he is. A vast desert unfolds before him. This is Avesta, the subcontinent of the border world. Praenus descends from the sky, greets the protagonist, and says a few words with a smile. Tadashi looks at him in surprise, and the old man replies that he will briefly brief him on the situation. The boy, confused, admits that he doesn't understand anything. The old man, looking at the landscape, lists the mountains, rivers, forests, and plains, and then adds that the location doesn't matter, because everything necessary for farming is here. Tadashi is surprised to see how pure and untouched the land is. He thinks to himself that he dreamed of farming in a quiet town, but ended up in a remote wasteland. He says he's glad to finally be able to do what he's wanted his whole life, but he doesn't understand why he'd start from scratch. The old man explains that this is the only area that hasn't been spoiled by humans yet. He then adds that in every country, huge taxes are levied for such activities. The guy is amazed, because he had no idea that even in another world, tax burdens exist. The old man asks if he still wants to go to any state, because there he will have to pay huge taxes and endure humiliation from the aristocracy. The hero replies that he should continue explaining. The boy thinks to himself that this is the first time he has seen the gods reveal all the cards in a fantasy world. The farmers here are poor and barely survive because of taxes. Some would consider this a test from the gods, but he understands that this is not the case at all. The old man says that all the countries in the world are mired in war and corruption, and that only he can save them. He adds that he would not want the boy to have to go through the worst of this world. Tadashi responds with emotion that he is very kind, and sincerely thanks him. The boy asks God if these lands are truly uninhabited. The old man explains that this subcontinent is called Limbo, and is considered to be rejected from divine blessing, so the land here is truly cursed. He adds that the local stones and trees are harder than iron, so any tool breaks easily. And the river flows not with water, but with deadly poison. The grandfather claims that no one could live here. The hero indignantly asks how he can survive then. The grandfather angrily asks to hear him out further and says that these lands were rejected by the gods, which is why everything here is so bad. But the young man has the blessing of the god of agriculture and the power of the 7 stars, so the situation is different. The protagonist asks how to use this power. The old man says that first he should dip his hands in the river. The boy asks in surprise, indignant, because it is poisonous water. He reaches out his hand to the river, thinking to himself that it is the same deadly poison. But suddenly a light flashes around, and the water becomes clean. The old man says that now it is safe to drink. Tadashi looks on in surprise but still agrees. The grandfather explains that his blessing can purify any water. The boy is delighted and sincerely grateful, but God says that it is too early to rejoice. After all, after being transferred to this world, his body has become 20 years old again. Moreover, now he is not afraid of either illness or injury. The young man realizes that this is why he felt a strange lightness in his body from the first moment. The god of agriculture says he has a small parting gift for him. The old man looks intently at the boy. Tadashi wonders what it is. Grandpa replies that it is a magic bag, the perfect tool for farming, because it has unlimited storage space where time has no power. Even food will not spoil there. The boy asks if he can really take it, The old man says, embarrassed, that if you don't take into account that he secretly took it from the treasury, then yes. Tadashi exclaims that he can't do that. God calms him down, saying he will ask for forgiveness later. He adds that it is the goddess's own fault, because she did not give him a blessing, so now let him pay with artifacts. The boy replies that in that case he will do everything to make her forgive him, and asks to guess what sacrifice she demands. But the old man advises not to worry, adding that when she is angry, it is better not to touch her at all. Then God calls for the conversation to continue and reminds the hero that he has understood that purified water is safe to drink. He says that he should move on, because now he needs to get food. The old man advises the young man to collect some water in a bag and save it. When he does so, God praises him and says that until he finds clay and makes a vessel, he will have to do this. The hero pours some water out of the bag and exclaims with a smile that it could well serve as a temporary vessel. But suddenly something strange catches his attention. Suddenly, a fish swims into the bag. The boy exclaims in amazement, stuttering with surprise, and asks if it really was a fish. The old man happily replies that it was, and sincerely congratulates him on his first catch, saying that now he has found food. His grandfather encourages him to walk through the forest in search of something useful. The trees there are leafless. The boy bends down and picks up a branch. He is amazed and thinks that these trees are truly magical and made of iron. The old man wonders if he has found anything. Tadashi answers in the affirmative, adding that he is surprised, since the blessing even allows him to understand the local plants. The old man explains that this is natural, because for his level of analysis it is quite normal. The only thing he didn't understand was what Alicia's herb was for. The god of agriculture said he was lucky, because it was a top-grade herb named after the goddess of healing, Alicia. But it wasn't supposed to be here, and he wondered how the young man had found it. The old man suggests that perhaps the goddess herself saw them and decided to help. The boy says that he must thank her and will plant the grass at the first opportunity. The grandfather praises him for such kindness. Then he asks what they will plant here, and adds that first they need to prepare the soil. Meanwhile, the boy is doing something behind his back. When the old man turns around, he sees a homemade tool in his hands and praises his ingenuity. Tadashi says that the tool is almost as he had planned, although he wanted to make a shovel, but it turned out to be a hoe. Grandfather calms him down and adds that this is a great start to farming from scratch. He solemnly says that the goal has been set and urges him to work with all his heart. The boy thinks this is his first strike with a tool on this earth. He counts down and lowers the hoe, which cuts through the earth with a thud. Suddenly, a huge area of land splits open. The god of agriculture exclaims in shock, unable to believe his eyes. The hero himself also cries out in shock. The old man again exclaims loudly in surprise. The boy asks what happened. His surprise knows no bounds, and the grandfather's face is full of undisguised shock. Finally, he says that he should ask the guy himself, and asks what he just did. Tadashi replies that he just followed his advice and put his heart into it. The god mumbles thoughtfully, and the hero asks if there is a problem. The old man takes a handful of soil and thinks that the young man has not only cultivated it, but also made it more fertile. The grandfather admits that he doesn't know, because no one has ever received the blessing of the god of agriculture, and he didn't think his power was capable of such a thing. He suggests that it was the hero himself who influenced the outcome, because human desires can work miracles. At that moment, the words about human desires trigger a memory in Tadashi. A familiar image appears before his eyes, the same computer screensaver that depicted nature. The protagonist confesses that he has always dreamed of doing just that. The old man says with a smile that he knew he was a good guy and encourages him to try watering the ground to test the power of the blessing. Tadashi pours water on the soil and sees it take on a natural hue. Grandpa advises him to plant something simple, like grass. The hero remembers Alicia's grass, which he had with him. He plants a plant, and it instantly rises. The boy exclaims in delight that it is growing too fast, and asks in surprise how this is even possible. The old man mumbles that he feels his own power coming out. So this is a blessing. It allows any plant to grow in just 3 days. The boy thanks him and says that now everything is gradually becoming clearer. The grandfather is amazed at his calmness and advises him to take animal bones found along the way, grind them into powder and use them as fertilizer. The hero sprinkles bone meal on the plant, and it starts growing even faster. Tadashi exclaims in surprise, and the old man says that even fertilizers work better here, and at this rate he will be able to grow a large tree in 2 days. The grandfather suggests trying to grow something else. The boy readily agrees, but God notes that it is getting late, so he should chop wood for the fire. The hero hesitates and says that it would be a shame to cut down a tree that has just started to grow, and folds his hands as if apologizing to him. He starts chopping wood anyway and asks God if he should dry the wood in front of the fire first. The old man replies that he will explain everything in a moment. He says that fresh wood is too damp and won't burn. But thanks to the hero's strength, it will dry out in just 3 days. The boy agrees that it's not that long. The old man says not to worry because there is a better way. He suggests that he squeeze the tree. The hero asks in surprise, and the grandfather nods in the affirmative and compares it to squeezing a rag. Tadashi squeezes the tree and moisture oozes out of it like wet cloth. He exclaims in astonishment, unable to believe his eyes. God says he understands what could have surprised him. The boy doesn't believe that this is a blessing, because it looks more like magic. He thinks about how he can simply squeeze the tree. But the old man reminds him not to measure everything by the laws of his world, because this is the world of the gods and their blessings. He explains that blessings are not magic, but part of the divine skill itself, and that God's powers are limitless. And now he has received a portion of that power, so he must remember that. The boy looks at his hand and thinks that the blessing of the 7 stars of the god of agriculture is truly amazing. The old man suggests lighting a fire. The hero apologizes and asks how he can get fire. God says not to worry. You need to take some dry grass and spread it out. The boy does everything as he is told and asks if he did it right. The old man claims that he did, and advises him to take 2 stones and strike a spark. The young man obediently does so, and eventually receives a spark, then a flame. God tells him to transfer the fire to a tree. He does so, and soon a bonfire is lit before them. Tadashi asks if he thinks the fire is nice. The god of agriculture laughs and says that after all the work, he enjoyed lighting the fire himself the most, and that the guy is funny. The hero adds that this is exactly the night fire he has always dreamed of. The old man agrees and says that sometimes there's nothing better than just sitting and talking by the fire with someone by your side. They sit and talk all night, looking at the stars and listening to the sounds of nature. The hero feels nostalgic because in a past life he only dreamed of being like their ancestors once were. At dawn, Tadashi is lost in thought. The god of agriculture asks him what happened. He replies that he was thinking about the future and decided that he must build a house, as well as have a pot for boiling water and many other things. God reminds him that yesterday he found clay. The hero remembers it and says he had completely forgotten. He mixes it with sand to make it stronger. The work goes surprisingly well, although he was quite weak at it before. He suspects that he has been influenced by the blessing of the god of forging. The old man wonders what kind of beautiful thing he has in his hands. The boy explains that it is Jimon pottery, which his ancestors made. The god of agriculture is surprised and says that it is interesting and looks extremely beautiful. The hero notes that all that remains is to burn it in the fire, but he notices that the clay is turning black. The old man, laughing, nods nearby. He says that everything is happening exactly as he explained. The guy asks in surprise what he is talking about, his voice full of misunderstanding. The old man explains that if you do everything too quickly, the dishes will crack, but thanks to the blessing of the god of blacksmithing, everything turns out perfectly. The boy decides to continue polishing the products to make them more beautiful and protect them from moisture. They continue to sculpt dishes. The hero notes that he hasn't felt so much happiness from work in a long time, because before his life was a continuous routine from morning to night. The boy admits that he is hungry and says it is time to cook something. God reminds him that yesterday he caught a fish while drawing water. Tadashi asks to wait, and asks if it is even edible. God says that it is a demon salmon, and it is indeed edible, although it is very difficult to catch, but adds that if cooked incorrectly it becomes poisonous. The boy asks again, stunned. The god of agriculture reassures him, saying that everything is fine, because as soon as he touched this fish, it immediately cleansed it of all poison. The hero asks in surprise if this is true. God jokingly says that if he doesn't like something, he can leave the fish and go practice martial arts. But the boy flatly refuses and insists that he only wants to be a simple farmer and nothing more. The old man laughs and tells him to remember. Even after cleansing, some creatures remain hostile. In the forests around here, they are exactly like that. God reassures him, saying that he will stay with him tonight. But he advises him to find shelter or build a house. At that moment, the young man suddenly notices something and stammers, asking what it is. The grandfather replies that it is just a demonic bird, and asks not to worry. The boy says he will need a weapon. The god wonders why, since he already has tools. He explains that demon wood and ore are stronger than steel, so any of those tools would be better than a sword. The grandfather reminds him that he is a hero and a bearer of blessings. Thanks to this, he is stronger than any person in this world. The boy answers uncertainly, but he decides to prepare anyway. The old man supports him and asks if he remembers Alicia's herb, adding that it can be used to make a healing drink. The god of agriculture emphasizes that it is better to prepare in advance, because this way he will be able to save not only himself, but also dozens of other people in the future. The boy thinks about it, but the old man brushes it off, advising not to worry about it. They continue cooking. First the guy cuts the salmon, then he throws the pieces into boiling water and adds some mushrooms. The boy thinks the smell is quite appetizing. After tasting it, he realizes that the dish is delicious, but it lacks miso, sauce, or even salt. God asks why not add some of Alicia's herb. Tadashi asks if he can. He throws it into the dish and notices that the taste becomes even better. The old man says that it is generally an ingredient in the elixir of life, but as a seasoning it is also great. While the soup is cooking, the old man says that even as God he can accept food as a sacrifice. The boy is surprised and asks what he would like to receive as a sacrifice. God says that he would dream of a stone statue, but for now he will be satisfied with that. When the dish is ready, the grandfather wishes the boy good luck and asks him what he thinks. The god replies that the food is extremely delicious. He hasn't tasted anything like it in a long time. Tadashi is glad that he liked the dish. The god of agriculture says that he would even invite that green-eyed guy to such a dinner, and adds that although it is impudent, he would really like to receive the statue. The hero guesses that he is talking about Vulcan, and the old man confirms, because he creates the best tools in the world. The god of forging appears out of nowhere. Vulcan says he doesn't need much persuasion. Kronos hands him a bowl of soup and asks him to taste it. He remarks that it is fish soup. He tastes the dish, and Tadashi, calling him Mr. Vulcan, asks if it tastes good. He replies that it's very good. Kronos adds that once he's eaten, it's time to get to work. Vulcan is surprised and asks what he means, but agrees to postpone the pleasure. The god of agriculture nods and tells him to eat, but to listen carefully. He throws an object into his hands and asks if he recognizes it. Vulcan says it is demonic ore. Kronos asks if he can work it out. He adds that it is impossible for ordinary people, but for the god of forging with his power, nothing is impossible. Vulcan wonders where the divine power came from. The old man exclaims in astonishment that he has never heard of a mortal being able to create anything from it, and demands to know the secret. The god of forge says it's because mortals are too narrow-minded. He turns to the hero and tells him that they need tools, a furnace, an anvil, a hammer, and tongs for hot metal. Tadashi asks to speak more slowly. God says they'll start with something simple, a furnace. He adds that it would be good to have molds for melting and a place for the material, and that's it. The hero completes the construction of the furnace and announces that everything is ready. Vulcan orders to light it and add air and wood until the temperature reaches its peak. The god of forging praises him and says that all that remains is to keep the fire going. Tadashi says that demonic trees don't burn. The god asks if he's sure, because with effort, they can be set on fire, but few people want to try that hard. The boy says that the fire still won't catch. Vulcan smiles and tells him to wait and watch carefully. Gradually, the flames engulf the branches, and he explains that the color of the fire has changed from red to blue. Tadashi deduces that the higher temperature is needed for ignition, and assumes that the same applies to demonic ore. The god of forging praises him and says that he understood right away. He adds that Mia is unaware of this and tries to steal things made of this material. Vulcan says that since he understands everything, it's time to act. He adds that he will be there and give advice if needed. The guy thanks him. Tadashi gets to work. He processes the stone, and the ore begins to glow blue. He thinks to himself that he is doing everything right. The god of forging addresses him. The boy shudders and answers uncertainly. But he only praises him, saying that the blue aura means that one can work with ore. He says that he has never had a better student. The boy thanks him. The hero hesitates about what to do next, and decides to ask Vulcan. He advises to first make a plate, and then you can try forging a hammer or other tool. The guy thinks that even if it doesn't work out, he will at least understand the direction in which to move forward. Vulcan says that everything is fine, and when he is finished, he should temper the product in water. The result will be a blue ore, extremely strong, suitable for making wonderful tools. He praises the boy, saying that this is a great start. The protagonist holds the finished tool in his hands and says that his hammer is finally out. He admits that it looks so-so, but it will do its job and will get better over time. The god of forging praises him and says that with practice, everything will only get better. The young man promises to try harder and asks to be taught. Vulcan agrees and advises them to mine more ore and build a better forge next time. He also wonders if the hero can work with clay. The boy shows the clay pots and is surprised that God didn't notice them. Tadashi explains that he fired them in a fire at a high temperature, and they are ceramics. Vulcan says that the quality should be improved and suggests creating a kiln for firing. The hero replies that he would be glad to help in any way. God agrees, because there is nowhere to retreat. They begin to work together. Their speed is impressive. Any mortal would only envy them. With joint efforts, they achieve the desired result. Eventually, the boy falls asleep from exhaustion. Nearby, Vulcan notices that he has finally rested. He says that it is a pity, but even the bearer of blessings needs sleep. He lets him sleep, because the boy has worked for 2 days in a row. The god of agriculture says that they have developed Tadashi's abilities well. Vulcan agrees and adds that a seed that has fallen into fertile soil and is carefully cared for will surely sprout and bear great fruit in the future. Another god asks if he really thinks the young man will flourish. Kronos replies that there is no certainty. In the days they spent together, he only realized that this is not the kind of person who is willing to risk his life. Vulcan remarks that even if he can't save the world, he can at least make it a little better. The god of agriculture thinks that the place the young man has ended up in is nothing more than an abandoned prison in the world of Avesta. But he believes that as long as Tadashi is here, he can change everything. Not just for the locals, but for the gods themselves. At least he has to try, and they will only watch. The god of forging thinks about it, but finally agrees. Both gods turn around and see that the boy has woken up. One of them exclaims that Tadashi has finally opened his eyes, and turns to him. They say his training is complete, and it is now time to leave him alone. Tadashi thanks them. Vulcan adds that it has been a long time since he had such a capable student. He asks them to contact him if they have any problems, but jokingly warns that he won't work for nothing, and will demand a good sacrifice. Everyone laughs. The guy replies that everything is fine and they can count on him. Kronos reminds the young man that he must first arrange his own life before thinking about the sacrifices. Tadashi agrees and thanks him for the advice. Meanwhile, Vulcan urges Kronos to move. The old man says he will miss the boy, but these are the rules. He asks him to take care of himself. Tadashi agrees and thanks him again for his help. The gods rise into the air. Kronos shouts that they will meet again. The boy looks after them and says that it will certainly happen. Looking at the sunrise, he decides that it is time to harvest the first harvest. Thus began his new life in this world. After the third harvest, the field was transformed, and the cypresses and chestnuts he had planted began to resemble a small forest. He built himself a small house, a granary, and a small cellar. This was enough for the quiet life he dreamed of. But the hero admits that he has been feeling lonely lately. He thinks this is a disadvantage of living on the edge of the world. He increasingly wants a pet, but he wonders where he can find one in such a remote place. Suddenly he hears screams. The boy asks himself what it is. He doesn't want to interfere but decides to take a look, because if there's trouble, he can always run away. He follows the sounds and suddenly sees a strange scene. A little puppy running away from the monster. The guy understands that if he does nothing, everything will end tragically. He hesitates whether to save or run away, but suddenly he remembers the words of the god of agriculture, that now he has become very strong. The boy gains determination, takes the tool out of his bag and thinks that he is blessed and must act. He shouts at the monster to back off and sticks the crowbar into the ground. The boy wonders if it will work. The monster turns its head towards him, but he rushes after the puppy again. The hero says that it is too impudent. A plan is already forming in his head. A frontal attack is useless. If it flies, it can be shot down. The guy swings his hoe and throws a lump of earth at the monster, shouting, "Get it!" The monster roars indignantly, and the hero shouts if it wants more and orders it to climb up. Tadashi throws dirt at his opponent again, exclaiming that there's plenty of it here and nothing to be ashamed of. He warns him that if he tries to crawl through here again, he'll bury him on the spot. The boy shouts after the bird not to come back, calling it an overgrown rooster. The frightened puppy trembles in his arms. He looks at its body with pity and sees the terrible wounds. The hero examines the animal's wounds, asks for patience, and begins rummaging in his bag. He takes out a medicinal plant and bandages the wound, thinking that this should help. Then he gently strokes the puppy's head. The boy asks him where he came from and where his parents are. He guesses that he is lost or running away from a monster. Tadashi notices the dog reaching for the bone and asks him, smiling, if he wants it. The animal greedily gnaws at the bone. The boy exclaims in fear, thinking that if the puppy eats like that, he will break all his teeth. He takes the food out of the bag and hands it to him, gently telling him to eat normally. Smiling, the hero thinks the animal is extremely cute. Although he doesn't know who it is, it looks a lot like a dog. Tadashi asks if it wants to go with him, because it can't stay here. The puppy happily responds. The boy takes it in his arms and says that now they will live together. He remembers that the puppy should be given a name and looks at it with curiosity. An idea pops into his head. He says that because of the strange sounds the baby makes, from now on he will be called Kuru. The boy is happy that he is no longer alone. Lying in bed, the hero thinks that the forest is gradually growing, the fields are expanding, and he already has several types of edible crops. However, he is worried that the season is coming to an end, and he has not had time to do so much. He looks out the window and decides to go explore what's out there. He goes outside and starts packing his things. Surveying the collection, he says that although he doesn't know what awaits them, he must be prepared for anything. He turns to Kuru, who already looks older, and marvels at how quickly he has grown. Tadashi wonders if this is normal for him, but concludes that he must be a special subspecies of dog in this world. He tells Kuru that they are going on a short trip. Kuru barks as if asking where exactly. The boy points over the horizon and says that they are going to the sea to get salt. He doesn't know how many days it will take, but there is nothing else to do right now. The boy asks if Kuru sees where he is pointing. Kuru barks happily, as if inviting him to sit on his back. Tadashi refuses in surprise, saying that he can walk on his own. However, the beast insists and forces him to sit down. The boy exclaims in surprise, and Kuru starts running. They cover the distance quickly, and Tadashi is surprised that his friend's speed is equal to that of a car. The beast roars happily. They quickly reach the sea. A magnificent landscape opens before their eyes. The boy says that he would have walked for many days, and sincerely thanks Kuru for such a journey. He thinks that the sea of this world is strangely similar to the sea of Earth. He does not immediately notice that the water here is dark. The boy assumes that he can clean it, touches it, and the water becomes transparent. He exclaims in delight. He tastes the water and realizes that it is salty, just like in his world. He assumes that their worlds have more in common than they seem. So he decides to go into salt mining and thinks it is the right plan. He reasons, if you boil salt water and let it evaporate, salt will remain at the bottom. The boy begins to boil the water, imagining the production of salt. But suddenly an animal appears nearby, and he asks what happened. The hero notices the seafood and exclaims in delight. The beast calls him to follow him. The guy hesitates but goes. Kuru leads him to a pond. Tadashi exclaims in delight, saying that it is an incredibly large lake. Then, pleased, Kuru brings him a lobster in his mouth. The hero looks at him in amazement and is surprised that even such creatures exist in this world. At first he doesn't believe it, because it's a different world. But he quickly dismisses his doubts and says that he doesn't care. The main thing is that there are lobsters here. A sumptuous array of seafood appears on the table. Tadashi breaks off a piece and hands it to Kuru, suggesting he try it. He tastes it and thinks it's incredibly delicious. And it's also immediately salty, which is natural for sea creatures. He repeats to himself again that it's simply delicious. Kuru gets upset when the food runs out. The hero calms him down and promises to cook more, so don't worry. But then the silhouette of a ship appears behind him. The boy thinks that Kuru has started drinking a lot. He decides that it is because of the salty food, and decides to give him water. Looking back, he notices Kuru in a completely different place, and then he wonders, if he's there, then who's drinking the water? Turning around, he sees the girl and screams in fright. The girl with cat ears says that the water is gone. The guy is shocked, can't even gather his thoughts, and asks himself if it's really a girl. He notices that she has ears, and remembers that he has only seen them in his fantasies. He wonders where she comes from and whether this is a sign of the world's water problems. The girl addresses him as a gentleman and asks for water and food. The guy asks to wait, inwardly surprised that he was called a gentleman. With tears in her eyes, the girl hugs the confused hero. But suddenly other girls run up to him. One of them shouts for him to let go of Aaron and addresses him as if he were a human. The guy wonders what is happening. First a girl with cat ears, and now an elf. He concludes that they must have come from that ship. He was so engrossed in the seafood that he didn't even notice. The guy wonders why the girl is wearing a swimsuit, since elves are supposed to live in forests. He can't understand what's going on. The second girl asks if he heard her words. She shouts even louder for him to take his hands off Aaron. The hero asks the girl to let him go, proving that he himself does not like it. The other girls shout for him to let her go immediately, because it is unthinkable for a man to touch Aaron. The eared girl calls him sir again and asks for food, but Tadashi sets a condition that she not address him like that again. She happily tells Isekai'D that he is a good man, but the elf distrustfully tells her to stay away from him. The elf warns that people are treacherous and could poison the food, but the boy replies that he just got it and ate it himself. Isekai'D is surprised and asks if this is the border of human lands, but Tadashi sincerely doesn't understand what border he's talking about. She wants to know where they sailed to. but he replies that the gods called it the edge of the world, which amazes her even more. The elf says that the water here must be black and poisonous, and he explains that he purified it, otherwise he wouldn't have gotten salt or seafood. Iselena doesn't believe him and calls him a liar, but he insists he's telling the truth, even if they refuse to believe him. The girl with cat ears offers everyone a taste and says that there is clean water, but the elf looks at her in surprise. Aaron begs because there is no food or water on the ship, and confesses that if it weren't for this man, she would have died long ago. Tadashi says he is willing to share the provisions, but the elf refuses, stating that humans can no longer be trusted. She looks at Kuru and asks what kind of magical beast it is and why it is so gigantic. The boy doesn't understand her. He says it's just a dog, maybe a wolf, and is surprised by such a reaction. But the girl shouts that such huge ones don't exist. The elf exclaims that his fangs can even bite through dragon scales and calls him the legendary Fenrir. She faints from fear. Her friends support her and call out Iselena's name, and Tadashi tries in confusion to bring her to her senses. She jumps up, sharply pushes him away and screams, calling him a human, but he asks her to stop humiliating him like that. He explains that he saved them from starvation and suggests they rest and regain their strength, handing her a bowl of water. The girl is surprised to hear that it is a decoction of Elysia's herb, and asks where he got such a rare plant. She remembers that she has the blessing of the goddess of healing, so she immediately understands. The guy is not lying. This is really Elysia's herb. Realizing how hard it is to find her in the world, she begins to believe that he is truly a good person and accepts the drink. She regains strength quickly, gets up, and Tadashi calms her down and tells her that she needs to walk around a bit. The girl is surprised to notice that she is lying on the grass. Even though she was on the beach, he replies that he moved her to make it more comfortable. She asks incredulously about raising Alicia here, but in her mind she is increasingly amazed at the man and his strength. At this moment, Tadashi strokes Kuru, and the girl notices the glow of the 9-star blessing on his hand. Realizing that he has the highest blessing, she decides it is better not to go against him and apologizes for her harshness. Then she calls herself the head of the Sea Elf clan and the representative of the Kambala archipelago, Iselin Ariadne. Tadashi says he's heard of her as the queen of the archipelago, but she modestly replies that that was once the case. Now she's just the leader of the elves. The boy suddenly remembers that he hasn't introduced himself yet, and introduces himself to Ono Tadashi. She asks in surprise if he is really the king. He hastily denies it, explaining that Tadashi is just his first name, and Ono is a surname that she heard incorrectly. The elf says that if a person has a surname, then his lineage is known, and suggests that he may be a knight, a hero, or a sage. But he calmly denies that he is an ordinary farmer. Impressed by his words, Irene says that the gentleman is kind, because he even has 7-star blessings from the god of agriculture and is able to grow everything surprisingly quickly. The elf sternly reprimands her for her frivolity, but Aaron insists that without his help they would have starved to death long ago. She hands Iselena a piece of seafood, urging her to try it. The elf takes it with cold indulgence, while the protagonist looks on in surprise at their behavior. After tasting it, she grimly declares that she should have tested the food for poison by forcing him first, but she admits that she still needs to gain strength. The hero is surprised by her words and realizes that in this world there are strict customs for checking food that he had not known before. With a furrowed brow, but still she finishes her meal. The guy smiles and hears gratitude for the food directed towards him. Suddenly the elf drops to his knees. Both he and the cat-eared girl are stunned when she asks to be his servant. Her words echo in this hero's head, and he feels the heavy gazes of others. His soul is torn apart by confusion and misunderstanding of the meaning of such gratitude. He hastily says not to take this seriously, because he will never make the girl his slave in his life. The elf sadly replies that someone has to sacrifice themselves, and it should be her. Irene objects, stating that as their leader, she must become the servant. However, Iselena shouts at her, reminding her that Irene is the hero of the beastmen and their last hope. The boy wonders why they express gratitude through slavery. They are confused in their answers, saying that people always take them captive, and now they are afraid of something different. The hero, confused, asks what they think of him anyway. The elf coldly asks if he would like to have a beautiful maid. His imagination paints absurd pictures, and he embarrassedly assures that he has never desired such a thing. He adds that he has lived his entire life on his own and has no need for servants except for Kuru. The elf girl asks in astonishment, and the other girl wants to know why he helped then. The guy shrugs and says he's just helping those in need. Isn't that what they do here? The girls just shake their heads in denial. Inside, he feels even more strange and suspects that something is wrong with these people. Then he remembers that he is in the Flater archipelago among elves and beastmen. Iselina confesses that they were captured by a military duchy of people from the Eastern Sea. The boy asks in surprise if they obey them. She replies that they were previously constantly destroyed by demons from the North Sea who devoured her companions, and this memory breaks the hero's heart. She continues that the sea elves and beastmen have always been weak peoples and have stuck to their borders. Now the archipelago is torn between demons and humans. Irene adds that only the girls remained alive, because the men disappeared in the war or fell prey to demons. Iselina says that the demons only see them as food, and the Duchy of Humans is slightly better, but their demands are unbearable. Irene says that she was ordered to fill 7 treasuries with gold or become a slave. The boy remembers God's words and realizes that these demands are exactly what Kronos warned about. They say that to escape slavery, they fled by sea in search of provisions. The hero clenches his fists, thinking that this world is too cruel. He turns to Iselina, offering to share the food, asks if they are omnivores. She answers in astonishment that they are. He shakes the food out of the bag, causing surprise. The hero says that this is enough to start with, but he is ready to give more. Aaron, happy, thanks him, calling him sir again. He reminds her that he asked her not to address him that way. Behind him, the girl hesitates, but finally asks about the rare herb Alicia gave him. Does he have any more? Tadashi smiles and says there's a whole field. Let him go and get some. She examines the plant in astonishment and asks if he really grows it himself. Iselina angrily declares that this is impossible because the herb is rare and extremely capricious. The girl with the ears stops her, reminding her that Tadashi has the 7 stars of the blessing of farming, and it's easy for him. Iselina is devastated, admitting the truth. She says that there are many wounded on the island and is surprised by his generosity. The guy calmly replies that if they just tell him how much they need, he will give it. The elf sincerely thanks and apologizes for not confessing her blessing to the goddess of healing earlier. She is able to create an elixir from the herb that will be stronger than the plant itself. The hero is surprised and calls it impressive. The girl offers to show her abilities right away, takes a healing herb, crushes it, boils water, and finally pours everything into a glass jar. Lifting the jar, she causes a glow and prays to the goddess of healing, Alicia, begging for the power to heal. The protagonist is surprised. The result is an elixir. She says it's a small price, but let him consider it payment for his help. Tadashi agrees and accepts it. He admits that this is the first time he has seen such beautiful glass. Iselina asks in disappointment if that is all, because she was expecting an assessment of her skill. Tadashi apologizes and praises her talent. In response, she explains that glass is made from ordinary sand, so he can make it too. Then she calls another girl, Asya. Asya approaches and, addressing Mrs. Iselina, obediently replies that she is ready to serve. Her eyes shine with excitement. The protagonist looks at the girl and notices her glasses. It occurs to him that in this world it is possible to create lenses. The elf explains that the glass and flasks are made by Asya, who has the blessing of 1 star from the god of blacksmithing. She adds that the elves know how to make glass and have their own secret knowledge that they are ready to pass on to him. The main character is happy and asks to teach him because he also wants to be able to make such glass. The girl is a little embarrassed but agrees and says that she will show him everything. But he immediately notices that even with a sea of sand under their feet, they have no stove or tools. Tadashi says he can fix everything now. He takes out his bag, pours out the materials, and suggests naming what exactly is needed. He is glad that Kronos gave him such a bag. The elves are amazed. Asya begins to explain the process, and they begin work. Iselina sees him creating bricks and asks her friend how it is possible. She assumes that he also has the blessing of the god of blacksmithing, and the main blessing speeds up the process. The girl is surprised that he has been blessed by several gods. She admits that Asya understands this better, and therefore trusts her words. Finally, the hero completes the construction of the furnace and thinks that in the future, he should also make portable versions. Asya takes a handful of sand and explains that the quality of glass depends on the purity of the sand, and sea glass has a lot of shells, so she needs algae. Iselina suggests taking them on the ship. The hero thanks her and agrees. Already on the ship, he suddenly notices something and looks at that place in surprise. He asks the girls if Undaria is a feathery plant. Iselina wonders how he knows about such algae. The protagonist confirms that his world also had an ocean. He says he doesn't know how much glass is needed here, but he will save some of the algae for the soup. The girl is surprised and asks if he really eats them, since others always throw them away. He says they are quite tasty, although they have a specific taste that not everyone likes. Iselina thinks about it and admits that he would look good among the sea people. She blushes slightly, smiling. The hero mentally jokes that the local seaweed could be called Japanese. He notices the seeds of sea cotton and sea rubber, applies judgment, and wonders how they differ from ordinary ones. The girl explains that they make their clothes from sea cotton and rubber. She shows them on herself. The hero blushes and says that he understands, and that they should be grown. He asks to show him exactly how. The girl agrees. At the same time, she warns that growing it can take a year or more. The hero enthusiastically says that it is interesting and offers to take a look at his method. They kneel together by the water. Tadashi throws the seed into the water. Isolina thinks that nothing will happen because he just planted it. But suddenly a small tree grows, and she exclaims in amazement. The hero remembers that he can also feed it. She praises him for his cleverness because the tree can also be used as fertilizer. He suggests checking it out and pours fertilizer on it. The girl can't believe her eyes. She's amazed at how quickly the tree is growing. The main character thinks that such giant trees will now grow right on the beach. That's enough for the glass. He turns to Isolina, and she answers. He reminds her that she promised to do anything to repay him for the help and food. The girl, frightened, says that she is ready to do anything if it is within her power. He understands that this world doesn't need warriors or healers, but only those who can feed people. And if that's the case, Tadashi is willing to sacrifice for his goals. He says he's a simple farmer, knows nothing about this world, so he offers a deal. The girl asks, a little surprised. He backs up his words and explains that as a farmer he needs plants, seeds, and knowledge, and in return he will provide them with Alicia's food and grass. He aims to make this island and their people happier. The girl agrees, smiles gently and blushes slightly. Isolina says that they are returning to their island tomorrow morning, but she will fulfill his request. The main character asks, surprised. Suddenly he notices that it is already evening. The girl looks at him with surprise and asks why he has changed so much. He admits that he was too exhausted and forgot to make his bed. The materials went to the stove and tools. He gets irritated, but the girl gently calms him down. Isolina encourages him. She opens the tents, and when one is ready, the hero asks, stunned, if they were with them the whole time. He thanks them, and the girls smile. Kuru runs to him. The hero praises the beast for a beautiful day. He notices that it is in the sand and leads it to the water. Kuru growls happily and jumps into the waves. After bathing, Kuru becomes fluffy and beautiful. The hero involuntarily notices the girl's bathing and blushes, not knowing how to take a bath himself. Smiling, Isolina approaches and invites him to spend the night in her tent. The hero is embarrassed, refuses, and says he would rather stay by the fire. But Isolina and Asya forcefully drag him inside, not allowing him to sleep outside. The hero is surprised to see the spacious tent and hesitantly admits that this is a bad idea. He eventually agrees, but the girl with the ears happily exclaims that Mr. Tadashi will sleep with them. The hero gets angry and refuses, going to the bonfire, while Eren just smiles. But suddenly Kururu appears. The hero sighs and says that the beast did persuade him, and they stay together in the tent. The night passes peacefully. At dawn, the heroes go outside. They are greeted by a joyful Eren and asks if he is awake. He smiles, noting that she is up early too. She asks if he will work, because he had a chance to rest. The hero does not understand what chance he is talking about. Then the girl opens the curtain of the tent. They see Isolina sleeping sweetly. Eren jokes, reminding her that she promised to do anything for him. The hero asks confusedly what's wrong with her. The girl laughs and says that Isolina is not to his taste. The hero replies that he likes her, but he is not going to take advantage of her. To change the subject, he asks how the fabric stays on the tent. The girl laughs at the stupid question and replies that it's because of the glue, and how else. The hero thinks that here, as in his world, glue is made from animal bones. Asia greets everyone with a good morning and offers to show how tents are made. She explains that the elasticity is provided by sea rubber, and the frame is made of different types of wood. The hero recognizes the intelligence of the elves and nods in admiration. Eren asks if he really enjoys this kind of craft. He happily replies that he's dreamed of it his whole life, and then asks what she enjoys. She thinks, hesitates, and finally says that, as a warrior, she loves battles. She proudly adds that she once even killed a shark. The hero looks on in disbelief. He admits that he did not expect such an answer. At this time, an elf approaches them. The hero greets Isolina good morning and serves her water. She says, embarrassed, that she rarely shows herself sleepy in front of others. The hero realizes that he was wrong. She is indeed a real princess. Isolina says that they are leaving for the island and will be home tomorrow as the wind is favorable. The hero asks to quickly bring food for her people. He assures her that it's a deal, so she doesn't need to thank him again. The girl looks at him in admiration and blushes, but repeats her words of gratitude once more. The hero realizes the words of Kronos. Divine power is not given in vain. It must be justified through helping others. Iselina leaves him Asia and 2 other girls and asks him to take care of them. The hero agrees. She boards the ship and he wishes them a safe journey. Now the hero turns to the girls, asks them to name themselves and tell what they know, so that each of them can get their own job. One says her name is Lola and she is skilled in crafts. The other introduces herself as Barry and adds that she worked in the fields. The hero nods, trusting both of them and Asia. He asks them to change clothes, because working in swimsuits is too revealing for him. The girls wonder why all the elves wear swimsuits. Lola replies that it's the most comfortable clothes for working on the beach. The hero explains that they have different tasks now, and he will give them different clothes. Working with exposed skin is dangerous, the girls agree. Asya asks where to start, and adds that they can make glass. The hero thinks and says that first they will grow a forest. The girls are surprised and ask questions. The beauty of the seascape opens before them. Barry is stunned that trees really do grow just by watering. The hero explains that he wasn't kidding. He thinks he'll plow the land, and Barry will do the planting and watering. He concludes that if everything goes according to his instructions, anyone can grow anything on his land. The hero feels that the preparations for the forest are complete. The girls curiously ask what happened. He stops and says he wants to dig a well here. Barry assures him that she can do it herself because she has already done it on the island. The hero refuses and says he will manage on his own. He is sure that this is where he is looking for. The girl is confused. He hits the ground with the tool. Barry exclaims in surprise. The hero smiles and says he guessed correctly and asks to move away. Suddenly, a strong stream of water erupts from the impact site. Barry exclaims in surprise. Tadashi explains that he smelled fresh water underground and that's why he hid it there. He says with relief that it's good that everything worked out quickly and he didn't have to dig a hole. The girl agrees and admits that she didn't understand everything. She insists that he leave the work with the well to her because it is her duty to help. The hero agrees and says that the materials are ready and shows the place. He decides that even though it's still early, he'll make dinner. Asia asks Lola to help him cook. She happily agrees. They go to Kuru, who is happily showing off his large haul. Tadashi praises him for a job well done. He tries the salt and thinks it's great. Lola asks what she should do. The hero asks to give him some time and then tells him to bring the seaweed that Iselina left behind. He will prepare the broth while she soaks the seaweed in a large cauldron. Lola replies with a smile that she understands. She leaves quickly. The hero smiles and thinks that while there is still time before lunch, he can work without rushing. Lola calls out to him loudly and says that the broth is almost ready. Her face shines with joy. She smiles and notices Tadashi's table. She leans over and asks if he makes bread. The hero, surprised, admits that she guessed. He had heard that you can make bread and cookies from the root of the safflower, so he decided to try it. Lola smiles and says that she has already baked bread so she can take it on herself. The hero smiles back but adds that he wants to learn too, so it's better to do it together. Lola happily agrees. She starts kneading the dough. She puts a piece on the table and explains that the fruits are good for baking, but it is better to mix them with flour. The hero listens carefully and says that he will have to ask Zelina to bring more. Lola asks not to worry because she will do everything herself. She adds that thanks to the salt the dough becomes denser. The hero agrees and says that although he is a master only in salt, and he makes it perfectly. Together they put the dough in the oven waiting for the bread. When the bread is ready, they take it out. The hero thinks it doesn't look like it does in his world. Breaking off a piece, he assumes that it must be so. It's time for the seafood soup. He takes out the seaweed before it boils. He adds Kururu's catch and says the dish will turn out well. When dinner is ready, all 3 girls are amazed. One of them tries it and exclaims that it's delicious. Asia says that she never thought Tadashi could cook seaweed, and now they'll eat it together. She assumes that he's also from the CL clan. Lola smiles and says that she doesn't think of him as a stranger either. The hero replies that he's glad to hear that. He asks Kururu if he likes the bread because it's made so delicious by the shea nuts. Kururu roars with satisfaction. The hero turns to the 3 girls and thanks them for their work today. He suggests they try coffee made from local fruits. Asiya says with curiosity that they have never had such a drink and asks what it is. One of the girls tries it and exclaims that it's too bitter. Lola apologizes and says they'd better drink some water. The hero is confused and says that he'd better apologize then. He thinks the taste is very similar to the coffee from his world. He doesn't understand where he went wrong. Asia says with a smile that she likes it, and that the coffee he made is wonderful. The hero admits with relief that he is glad to hear this. She asks him not to worry so much. The hero laughs and says that today he will teach her how to make glass better. She says, embarrassed, that this is the only thing that can help. Asya and Tata S work in the workshop and finally receive a glass bottle. The hero proudly says that the work is finished and holds the result in his hands. The girl enthusiastically calls it beautiful. She adds that he even made a glass-blowing device. The hero laughs and says that he just had a good teacher. He thinks of the gods and hopes that Vulcan and the others are alive and well. He thinks that one day he will have to treat them to seafood. The girl says that his wood burns perfectly, and together with his technology, they will be able to make glass of the highest quality. Asia tells Tadashi that if they had more glass, they could make a lot of elixir bottles. Tadashi replies that she understood correctly and asks them to make as many bottles as possible. The hero adds that she should also make glassware, because it is not only more beautiful but also much stronger than ceramics. The girl agrees without hesitation. Tadashi thinks to himself that they need a lot of elixir, so it's time to expand the ellis grass fields. At the same time, they need vegetables for food, so it's worth setting up another field for vegetables. Tadashi asks Barry for help, explaining that he needs to do something important before sunset. The girl readily agrees to help without any objections. The hero reflects that even though there is a lot of work, he likes living this way. After all, he creates his own tools and utensils from what he gets with his own strength. Tadashi thinks this is how he dreamed of living. Suddenly, Barry wonders if he should pick cotton and rubber today. She immediately adds that she will follow them. Lola explains to the hero that if he wants to get the threads and fabric, he will have to make a spinning wheel and a loom, and this is not at all easy. The girl says that she and Asia are ready to try and create everything they need. Tadashi agrees, and adds that he will then take on the task of making sewing needles. The hero decides to use cotton to create threads and fabrics because their quality is much higher and stronger than any substitutes. Tadashi admits that he doesn't usually think about such things, but this time he wants to make the girls something nice. That way they can also save money on swimsuits. Suddenly, Barry notices something and shouts, calling out for Tadashi. Everyone sees a ship approaching them. The hero recognizes Islaine and her companions, and is glad that they are in good condition. But after the first ship, others begin to appear. Tadashi is stunned, as he did not expect to see so many ships at once. The ships dock at the shore. The elves disembark and begin unloading their belongings. A girl named Erin runs to Tadashi, shouting, "Sir," and the hero angrily reminds him that he already asked her not to call him that. She just sticks her tongue out funny and says she doesn't know anything. Islaine comes over and tells Tadashi that they're back. She adds that they brought the harvest with them and asks to inspect it. The hero is stunned and surprised by this. Tadashi was convinced that Islaine and the others would only bring seeds, but eventually, he admits that the finished product is much more useful and needed. He inspects the baskets of provisions and says that the barley and hops will be useful for brewing. He will also use the sugarcane and palm nuts to make sugar and oil. The hero finds wheat and soybeans among the harvest. He thanks Islaine for the products he brought. She explains that they tried to grow them on the island, but nothing worked. She apologizes for the fact that their island is not suitable for some cultures. However, the hero interrupts and says that what they brought is more than enough, even more than he expected. Islaine says that almost everyone was sent here to help the hero with the fields. In total, about 150 people arrived. She also notes that they have brought some tools that will be needed to make the cloth. The hero sincerely thanks the elf for the things she brought. Islaine proudly says that the hero could not doubt her, because she ruled an entire country, so everything was calculated down to the smallest detail. Tadashi thinks that now he must create fields. But suddenly Islaine turns to Asia and asks if any of them have had an affair with Tadashi. The hero, hearing this, freezes in surprise. Asya blushes, embarrassed, and says that neither of them had even thought about something like that. To this, the girl replies that she wouldn't be offended, because he's a strong and prominent man, so it's natural to want to get closer to him. Tadashi wonders in astonishment if the girl realizes he's hearing all this. And then he has a question for Islaine. He asks why there are so many people here. He says he doesn't mind, but it's still a bit unusual. Islaine explains that all these elves will help build the village, although there may not even be enough of them. The hero asks in surprise. To this, the girl says that the village can only be built with Tadashi's permission. Tadashi replies that he doesn't mind living here, but he only came to stock up on food at first. He asks if she really wants to build a fishing village to harvest seafood. The girl objects, explaining that her goal is to build a full-fledged settlement here. She adds that she is glad that the hero created this forest for them. Therefore, she asks if it is possible to start cutting down the forest and building the village right now. The hero freezes in shock, not expecting such a turn of events. He explains that a felled tree cannot be used immediately. It needs to be dried, and reproachfully reminds the girl that she knows this very well herself. Tadashi adds that if you try hard, you can dry the wood in 3 days, because by using force, he can squeeze the moisture out of it much faster. The girl replies that she didn't expect an instant result from him, but since the god of agriculture, Kronos himself, blessed him, she believed that he would find a way to do it right away. Iselin admits that when she returned, she expected to see the wood already finished, which is why they brought carpentry tools with them to start work right away. But then she realized that even the strongest have their limits. The hero calls out to her in surprise, but Iselin, stopping, declares that she wants to build a kingdom under Tadashi's leadership. She says that she dreams of seeing him as a king who will wisely rule these lands, but the boy replies in confusion that he does not understand the meaning of her words at all. He asks if she is exaggerating his merits, and the girl confirms, emphasizing that he was blessed not only by Kronos, but also by other higher powers. Iserin remarks that even though the hero downplays his own achievements, everyone knows that it was a prison, and he turned these lands into fertile land. Tadashi stubbornly calls it only a gift from the gods. He asks if they don't have their own kingdom where they can live freely, and why Iserin insists on creating a new one. The girl talks about freedom, admits he is right, but adds that he has no idea what awaits them beyond this place. She calls out to someone named Lisa. The hero watches in surprise as the elf girl without her right arm emerges and asks what happened to her. Iserin explains that Lisa served her family for many years. She says that the girl's parents were devoured by monsters from the Demon Lord's army, and Lisa herself lost her arm while escaping from them. Iserin hands the warrior the elixir, and she obediently drinks it, while the hero watches in amazement. Before his eyes, Lisa's right arm begins to regenerate, and he is stunned to think that although he has heard about the power of this potion, he did not believe that it could restore lost limbs. The restored girl humbly thanks Tadashi, saying that now she will once again be able to serve Iserin loyally and without fear. Iserin explains that no matter how much she cares for her people, and no matter how many blessings she has, there is neither medicine nor an abundance of food on the island. She admits that she is incapable of ruling or protecting her people on her own, which is why she has abdicated. Tadashi listens to her with sadness in his heart. The girl adds that she only knows how to create elixirs, but even they don't cure everything. The hero asks if she will restore power if he provides materials and food, but she answers in the negative, explaining that the potion is only so strong because it is made from grass that Tadashi grew himself. She says that they are all alive, from Lisa to the weakest, only thanks to the herbs the hero provided, and that without him they would have died long ago. And then Iserin hands him a crown, telling him that the first king of the elves, Evolus, was a tree that later changed its appearance, and this crown is proof of his heritage. She states that all the elves wish to see Tadashi as their king, but the young man refuses, saying that he cannot accept such a valuable thing. The girl calms him down, explaining that there are those who will not leave the island, but others need a ray of hope, which only he can be, because she herself was unable to do so. The hero incredulously asks if she really believes he is capable of this. Iserin confirms and says that the lords are called apostles of the gods, and among them Tadashi is the most worthy. The boy thinks the blessing is just a sign of power, but the girl continues that none of those who call themselves kings are worthy of the title, including herself. Eren looks at Iselin with sadness and confusion, but she exclaims that Tadashi is different. He has a kind heart and strength beyond anyone's, and he is the one who should become the king who will protect the weak. The hero looked at her with regret, but agreed, only to clarify whether he must always wear the crown. Her face blossomed with joy at his agreement. Iserin addresses his people, announcing that he is abdicating the throne and handing over power to Tadashi. She places the crown on him and orders everyone to welcome the new king. The people rejoice, and Tadashi thinks he doesn't know what to do with these people now. He recalls that his maternal grandfather gave him the name Tadashi because he believed that his grandson would be able to change the world for the better. And now these words sound like fate to the young man. Tadashi always thought his grandfather was exaggerating, because in his past life he had failed. But now he understands that in this world he must try again. The hero takes off the crown and says he no longer needs it. The girl takes the crown and asks where he is going now. Tadashi replies that he should plow a new field, because there are more people, so more grass is needed. The crown does not exempt him from his duties. He says that a king should always take care of his subjects. The young man's words fill the girl with happiness. In his mind, the hero reflects that when building a village from scratch, one should immediately consider the location of the fields and the efficiency of the future harvest. Tadashi addresses the elves and says that from now on they must report all their needs to him, since Iselin has abdicated the throne. The happy elves immediately get to work. Tadashi confesses to Iselin that he didn't expect such expectations from her. The girl doesn't understand what he means. The young man waves it away, asking to forget his words. But at that moment, Iselin and Draus take him to the newly built house. The hero freezes in surprise. He looks around the building carefully, admiring the glass window and the speed with which the elves have completed the work. Iselin says that during subsequent constructions they will not be able to work so quickly. But for Tadashi, this house was built in the shortest possible time. The girl advises the hero to praise the carpenters who built the house. The young man looks at the workers in confusion. He notes that among those who arrived from the island, there are many more women than men. Tadashi gathers his thoughts and thanks the builders. They are beaming with joy. But Master Spike says it's too early to thank them and invites them to look inside the house. The hero is literally stunned by what he sees. Spike smiles, happy that the new king likes the interior. Tadashi thinks the boards are finished flawlessly, and the nails are driven in so skillfully that they are almost invisible. He asks the master what is missing for the work. The master replies that he has to economize due to the lack of iron. The hero says that as soon as he has finished with the fields, he will take up the iron. He adds that magic iron is much better than ordinary iron. Spike bows gratefully. Tadashi thinks that the iron supply is running out and he needs to come up with something urgently. Suddenly his attention is drawn to the luxurious bed in the room. He doesn't understand why it's so huge. Iselin explains that the size and softness of the bed are a symbol of royal dignity. But the hero says he meant something else. He finds it strange that the bed is too big for one person. Iselin reminds him that he sleeps alone. Tadashi is genuinely surprised how he could have forgotten such an obvious thing, and he feels embarrassed as the others are sleeping close together. Iselin asks who she can choose for him. The hero is surprised and does not understand what is being said. She says that he doesn't seem to like Asha and the others, so she assumes that Tadashi prefers slimmer girls. The young man is overcome with an uneasy feeling. He asks Iselin to slow down, but she doesn't understand what's wrong and assumes that he wants to invite several girls at once. Tadashi sharply denies it, asking what nonsense she is talking about. But Iselin disagrees, claiming that what she is saying is not nonsense at all. She says that now that he is king, he needs concubines. Tadashi freezes in confused thought. Finally, he realizes what Iselin is hinting at. At that moment, Eren appears and notes that the hero is trying in vain to convince the former queen to abandon this idea. She adds that Iselin never wastes time. The hero asks to explain what is going on here, but the girl tells him not to worry. She explains that elves and beastmen highly value their connection to kings, and besides, there are very few men these days. The hero indignantly says that there are almost none. Iselin declares that thanks to the hero, her people now have no problems with housing and food, so she is already thinking about reproducing. The hero asks if they don't hate humans, but Iselin replies that Tadashi is not like the others. She explains that elven blood is usually dominant, so even in mixed couples, an elf is more likely to be born, and advises him not to worry. Tadashi wonders in his mind how different his idea of elves was. Iselin adds that even if a person is born, the child will be happy in such a family, because now families need to be rebuilt after the losses of the war. She is sure that they will be the best for Tadashi, so she advises him to first get close to Eren, and then offers him Lisa. The hero refuses, saying that he doesn't know her at all. Iselin is surprised. The elves have heard that human men always need a woman. Tadashi agrees, but emphasizes that feelings cannot be ignored. The girl replies that elves have a mating season and their bodies are similar to humans, so there won't be any problems. She says that it's only worth getting close at a certain point in the cycle. The hero indignantly declares that Lisa, as a royal guard, can sleep next to him, but he will not touch her. Iselin asks, "What about Eren?" Eren jokes that he might as well get in line, and adds that Iselin herself is the most suitable for the role. The former queen sheepishly says she's not his type. Eren teases her that they didn't work out last time and advises her to be more persistent. Tadashi suddenly realizes that this really happened last time, and finds it hard to believe that it was all intentional. When he comes to his senses, he starts yelling at Eren to stop calling him master. The girl says she can call him king, but doubts it will make any difference. The hero agrees, but asks why she can't just call him by his first name like Iselin. She replies that Iselin is an exception, and calling him that could affect his reputation. The hero is surprised. After all, Eren is also a ruler, but he does not demand such treatment. Eren explains that beastmen live in packs with a clear hierarchy, and it's easier for her when there's someone stronger around. She says that, although blessed by the gods, her power has not saved the people from war. She wearily admits that she feels the same way Iselin did when she abdicated. Eren remembers when she first met the hero. She thought she would easily cope with him and get better, but these thoughts were deceptive. She suddenly comes to her senses, apologizes for her words, and urges him to ignore them. Tadashi doesn't believe that Erin's fate is so similar to Isolaine's. He thinks that the girl is still a child, but the burden of life is already too heavy. The hero tells Erin that she doesn't need to apologize and assures him that she can always rely on him. The girl is delighted, and he adds that he will do everything possible for this. Tears well up in Erin's eyes. She throws her arms around his neck, thanking him, and he can't believe she wants to protect someone too. Erin exclaims to Isolaine that she's lucky, because today the hero will probably choose her. Tadashi shouts that he didn't mean anything like that. The girl replies that he will just have to accept it. The hero feels a little irritated, but thinks that the main thing is that her mood has really improved. A new day dawns. In the hero's room, he leaves with Lisa. But suddenly Erin pops out from around the corner with a loud, "Good morning," and a mug of drink. Tadashi mumbles that Islaine has a strange posture in her sleep. The hero decides to leave the girl a place on the bed. Erin says that if she were braver, she would do the same. Tadashi reminds her that she was the one hiding behind Lisa's back. Lisa laughs, saying she's used to it. He thinks he was confident in his own endurance, but Elaine still managed to knock him off balance. Eventually, the former queen wakes up. The hero, embarrassed, turns away and says that today we should try again. The girl doesn't understand what he's talking about. Everyone heads out to the fields. Tadashi says that the wheat harvest has already been harvested, and now it's time for sugarcane, barley, and hops. Isolaine agrees to the cane but wonders why there is so much barley and hops. The hero explains, for beer. The shocked girl asks again. Tadashi is surprised that she really doesn't know anything about beer. Isolene admits that on the island they only brewed barley wine without hops and used it more as a medicinal remedy. From the girl's words, the hero understands that hops were not used in ancient wine. He says that such a drink could replace water because it did not spoil even during long sea voyages. Tadashi thinks that their drink should be a true gift from the gods. He wants this barley wine to have a unique taste worthy of the name Drink of Heaven. The hero asks Islin if there are any brewmasters among them. The girl says there is one, blessed by the same gods as him. Tadashi asks to introduce him. A girl named Merle, who works as a cook, appears before him. She listens attentively, nods, and promises to do her best. Tadashi sincerely thanks her for her devotion. He says that he has already prepared the barrels, so Merle can take them to work. The hero himself is about to go to the forge. The girl confidently answers that he should rely on her. Tadashi enters the blacksmith tent and asks Asya about the nails. She smiles and says that everything is ready, and she even managed to fix the old tools so that they are useful again. She warns that if you work too fast, even the best tools will break. Her words sound serious, making the hero think. Tadashi thinks it's pointless to melt iron anew every time. It would be better to restore it with magic steel, but supplies of this rare material are extremely scarce. The hero calls out to Kuru. When the creature appears, he asks her for legs to work with. Kuru happily responds and without hesitation gives him what he needs. Tadashi realizes that Kuru can lead them straight to the forest where there is steel. He orders the creature to replenish its water supplies and move along the river together. The hero flies above the current, collects water, and with it catches a huge fish called a devil salmon. This becomes an unexpected but valuable trophy. The action moves to the northern forest. There, the hero is chopping down trees and preparing to head for the nearest mountain. He calls out to Karura, and she finally appears before him. Gathering his strength, Tadashi swings his axe and shouts, "Dig out!" as he strikes the mountain. Huge blocks of stone fly in all directions from his devastating swing. The hero is pleased with the loot, but says that this mountain was just a decoy. He turns to Kuru and orders him to finish the job and return. They return to the village. Asya greets them joyfully, and Tadashi lays out mountains of materials and fuel in front of her. The shocked girl cannot believe her eyes. She asks what's going on. The hero replies that he thought that would be enough. Asya, confused, says that Tadashi brought too much raw material. She emphasizes that she alone cannot handle such a volume in the forge. She needs helpers and asks Tadashi to deal with it. The guy only silently wonders. The hero himself begins to work in the forge. He thinks that everything is ready and it is time to work on a par with the carpenters. His hands confidently get down to business. He brings a new tool to the carpenter. She exclaims in delight that it is incredible. She deftly takes it, working with the new thing easily. Tadashi explains that it's a plane. He says it works great, and the results are noticeably better than with regular tools. The carpenter says that the screws the hero brought hold much better than nails. She emphasizes that this has made the work much more efficient. The beastman exclaims that everyone must do everything for their king. The others agree. Tadashi feels that their unity can work true miracles. Suddenly, Asya turns to him. The hero turns at her voice. The girl says that it is time to rest, but he does not understand what she means. Asya shows him that Iceland, who is in charge of all the robots, is already exhausted. Only now does Tadashi realize what she is talking about and begin to worry. He thinks his corporate toughness from a past life has proven detrimental to his subordinates. His example has worn others out too much. Asya asks permission for a break for everyone. The hero agrees, realizing that rest is truly necessary. He slowly sips his drink while resting. Suddenly, Kuru swims up to him, holding a large shrimp in her teeth. Tadashi smiles and offers to fry it. The hero is building a fire, but suddenly a strange plant catches his attention. After thinking about it, he gets a new idea that could be useful for everyone. Asya wonders what he has invented now. Tadashi replies that he is creating liquid soap. He has mixed coconut oil, baked seaweed, and a little salt, and is letting it ripen. The girl is delighted with the aroma. She says the soap smells wonderful. Tadashi just smiles and adds that when there is soap, it immediately makes you want to take a hot bath. The hero reflects in a large bathtub that although a lot of work has been done, it has turned out to be simpler than he imagined, and now he can afford a break. A sudden noise behind him makes him look around, and Aaron runs up to him, looking in surprise at the amazing font, and the guy suggests she try it out herself. The girl presses the lever and happily watches the water pour out, while Tadashi shows the ruler of the beastmen his souls, and Eri happily puts her face under the stream. Amazed, she asks how this device works, and the hero explains that he has placed a huge tank of hot water at a height, so it pours down under its own weight. Tadashi thinks that the main thing is to imagine the end goal, because with a clear idea, you can create almost anything, even if it seems impossible at first. The hero announces the end of the day and advises everyone to relax in the bath, reminding them that they are already in their swimsuits, so they can safely go in, while Aaron impatiently calls out to the others. As he immerses himself in the water, he feels peace and the scent of cypress that permeates the air, remembers how long it has been since he last bathed, and thinks that this bath can bring him back to life. But suddenly he hears footsteps and, turning around, freezes in surprise because a group of girls without swimsuits are heading towards the swimming pool, leaving him speechless. Embarrassed, Tadashi asks why they are without clothes, and Aaron says with a smile that she feels freer this way and decided to take the moment to get to know each other better. She naively reminds him that the hero himself said this, but he hastily denies it, explaining that that's not what he meant at all, and feels increasingly embarrassed. Suddenly, Aaron rips off the hero's underwear, and he screams in despair, demanding that these antics stop, but the girl only grumbles that he is too boring. Without stopping, she grabs Isoline's towel, causing Tadashi to sharply exclaim that she has already crossed the line, and warns her that if this continues, she will face punishment. Upon hearing this, Aaron immediately apologizes in embarrassment, and the hero orders her to go wash up when suddenly another girl quietly walks past him. It was Lisa who apologized for the inconvenience and asked him not to be angry with Aaron, explaining that all this time the guy had been stressed because of her antics. Tadashi replies that he doesn't hold a grudge because Aaron is still a child, and thinks about how difficult it is for Lisa herself to be in this situation. He worries that the people of the principality, as well as the elves and beastmen, were rude to her, but Lisa assures him that everything was fine, and even says that the commander there was a woman. The hero is surprised that a woman was at the head of the national army, and thinks that this seems quite unexpected for a border principality. Lisa explains that the real target was not the Kumbala Islands themselves. They were used as a forward base to attack the Demon Kingdom from the opposite direction. She says that although they had their own troops, they resisted desperately, but the enemy commander, although of royal blood, turned out to be a cruel man. Lisa remembers how this woman personally went to the front line and killed several soldiers with one blow, and this scene is forever etched in her memory. She adds that that's when she lost her hand, and Tadashi is impressed, thinking that this is an extraordinary story, and although Lisa has a blessing, he wouldn't want to turn her into an enemy. The girl says that the duchy needed food for the army, so they agreed to supply food in exchange for the safety of their people, becoming a living treasury. The hero thinks with disgust that perhaps the duchy sought to disarm the elves, tax them, and turn them into slaves, and considers such a method dirty and vile. Lisa timidly asks permission to ask him a personal question, and when Tadashi agrees, she leans in and whispers in his ear. She asks how he can stand such closeness to the girl, and, noticing his embarrassment, quickly apologizes, fearing that she has inadvertently offended him. Lisa awkwardly admits that she wonders how he manages to keep himself in check around Lady Iseline, let alone someone like herself, and blushes. Tadashi is embarrassed, but admits that she is also worthy and attractive, and Lisa smiles gratefully, saying that this is the first time a man has said such words to her. The guy thinks for a moment and suddenly advises her to set boundaries, to draw a clear line. But the girl looks at him in surprise, not understanding what he means. The hero explains that when the beer is ready, he wants to hold a festival in honor of the gods, and even suggests holding a Shinto wedding. Lisa ponders the words about the wedding ceremony, and especially the Hatsuhan ceremony, and the hero asks her if it is really an ancient elven custom. Lisa explains that during the spring holiday, girls give flowers to the man of their dreams, and if he accepts them, the marriage is considered concluded. She adds with sadness that during the occupation they had no freedom of action and were forced to fight only for the right to live. The hero concludes that it is women who propose to them, and thinks that this custom is why Iselin is so persistent. Lisa asks what kind of wedding he would like. Tadashi talks about a big cake, fancy clothes, and an exchange of wedding rings. The girl smiles. It sounds like a big celebration. He reasons that for his engagement to Iselin, he will need wedding dresses, rings, and the right ingredients for the cake. The hero is already thinking about this when Irina's voice is heard behind him. She asks if Lisa is talking to the king alone, and immediately declares that he is marrying everyone. Hearing this, the girls immediately turn to the hero. Tadashi denies that he said that, but no one listens to him. He sadly thinks that it is useless to explain anything, and feels that a new commotion is about to begin. The next day, the hero sets a new goal, preparing for the wedding. He has already ordered alcohol to be brewed and ordered a wedding dress from Lola's dressmaker. Now all that's left to do is take care of the rings and the cake, but he still doesn't know what to bake the cake with or where to find the precious stones. Suddenly, Asya calls him, loudly exclaiming that something bad has happened. The hero advises her to get some rest, but the girl snaps back that now is not the time to rest. She pulls him over to look and shows him the gems. Tadashi is surprised and says they are diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, but Asia explains that they are mixed with magical minerals. The hero recalls how he once brought materials to the blacksmith, thinking that magical minerals did not mix with others. It turns out he was wrong, but he is still glad that Asya found them, because he was already worried about the rings. The girl asks permission to make them herself. Tadashi immediately agrees and says he trusts her completely. Asia gratefully promises to forge the rings with the pride of a craftsman. The hero is happy that the problem with the rings is solved, and now he must think about the cake. However, they have neither milk nor eggs, so he must find livestock. He stops in confusion when suddenly Kuru flies up and picks him up, carrying him somewhere towards the forest. The hero asks where it is flying and whether it is dangerous to go so deep, but the animal only hums in response. They stop deep in this forest. Kuru starts growling, and Tadashi senses that someone dangerous is lurking nearby. A sight opens before him, a multitude of cows and roosters. The hero shouts to them, offering them food. But the animals ignore his words. Then Kuru roars menacingly, and the animals tremble in fear. Tadashi realizes that these wild creatures are like children and need to be tamed. He promises to show them a place with better water and food if they give him milk and eggs. Kuru growls again, and the animals obediently obey, ready to follow the hero. Sitting on Kuru's back and leading the animals behind him, the hero thinks that taming them is actually not that difficult. The beast grunts happily in response. Returning to the village, he reflects that cattle breeding is an integral part of the agriculture practiced by humanity. Eren and Iselin approach him. Iselin says she heard about his first flower ritual and prepared the seeds, but what she sees suddenly shocks her. The hero thanks them for the seeds and explains that the cowshed and chicken coop are a perfect fit. He suggests planting flowers next to them. Eren is surprised and tells Iselin that these chickens and cows look very strange. Iselin replies that they are demonic animals, and they are real. Eren asks if it is possible to tame demon cows and chickens. Iselin seriously replies that neither humans nor magical creatures are capable of doing this. Eren points ahead. Tadashi pats the demon bird on the head and gently tells it to give away delicious eggs. Tears appear in the bird's eyes. Eren wonders why the demonic beast is crying. Tadashi realizes that in the legends these creatures were not tamed, but subdued. Iselin explains that this is why Fenrir protected them. Eren thinks for a moment, then asks if this means demonic beings can become a fighting force. Iselin doesn't immediately understand the meaning of his words. Eren says they already have over 30 of these fearsome beasts. If the prince's army attacks, these creatures could become their defense. Iselin finally understands the truth and notes that now everyone needs to be vigilant, because danger could come at any moment. Suddenly, the hero calls Eren and Iselin, inviting them to take the eggs and milk. There are so many of them that everything looks surprisingly appetizing. The girls freeze in surprise. Tadashi says that taming the demonic creatures will be a relief in the future. The girls realize how dangerous it is, because they are not tamed at all. Lola and Asha approach the hero. Lola proudly shows off her wedding dress and says it turned out beautifully. Asha brings a sapphire for her wedding ring. Tadashi is genuinely happy, says he didn't doubt them. He likes the engagement ring. Thanks Asha for her trust and support. The girls are beaming with happiness. Lola insists that they need to start mass-producing dresses as soon as possible, while Asha explains that she needs to make the rings to the exact size. The hero stops them, saying that they should first taste the bread. Everyone is surprised. Maru brings a freshly baked loaf that smells fresh. The bread looks extremely appetizing. The hero also shows the first batch of alcohol. Everyone is surprised at how much Tadashi has managed to do. Lola initially mistakes the drink for raw ale, but it's actually cold beer. She's impressed by the taste. The hero says that light beer is best drunk cold. Asha notes that the drink is very rich. Tadashi believes that magic and heavenly protection of the world are finally embodied in ordinary things. The girls taste the beer with bread. The hero explains that simple magic can cool or heat food, but the magic of life makes cooking truly incredibly easy and perfect. He thinks that since the oven is a success, he can bake a wedding cake, whip fresh cream and butter. At this moment, Maru turns to him. She says that the hero is kind to everyone, but she doubts that someone like her can get married. Tadashi is shocked and doesn't understand anything. He asks if the girl wants to marry him. Maru denies it, explaining that she has a child, and asks if he is okay with it. Tadashi freezes in surprise. Maru tells him that her husband Cornell died in the war with the principality, leaving her a widow at the age of 28. She says that she is proud of her husband and remembers him with honor. The hero replies that one should always remember the brave warrior and his exploits. A little girl runs into the room. The hero asks if this is really Maru's daughter. The girl confirms and calls herself Petya, hugging her mother tightly. The hero thinks that Maru is left alone with her child after the war. He understands that it will be difficult for her, but she wants to find happiness again. Maru says that if she becomes the wife of the hero who saved the island, her husband will be happy too. She promises to raise her daughter and give her new children. Tadashi drinks his drink silently, then says he understands that they should get married. He turns to Petya and tells her that she can call him dad. The girl happily agrees. Maru thanks her daughter for the permission she has given him. The hero adds that after the wedding the girl will be able to call him by his first name. Tadashi feels he has done the right thing. The wedding day is approaching. Preparations are in full swing, and the small village of 100 people is turning into a town. He lists a rich table, a salad of wild vegetables, fragrant bread, spicy seafood soup, tender steak, and a wedding peach cake. Suddenly Iselin calls him. The hero turns around and sees a crowd of girls in wedding dresses. They say they are ready. Tadashi is confused and embarrassed. He thinks he didn't check in advance how many brides there would be. He didn't expect to have to marry 7 at once. Iselin asks if everything is okay. The hero replies that it is. Inside, he hesitates, because such a marriage does not seem entirely ethical, but he accepts it as the custom of the island. Barry says that Tadashi is too generous, and that any friendship he has ends in marriage. The hero looks puzzled, not understanding such words. He assures them that this is not true and asks them not to talk nonsense. But the girls admit that these are the rumors that are spreading among people. The hero thinks that they have come a long way together, and even if all this is necessary, he has no regrets. Iselin suggests exchanging vows, but the hero advises them to first taste the divine blessings and only then begin the meal. The gods themselves appear before them. Kronos, the god of agriculture, greets the hero and marvels at his strength. Vulcan, the god of blacksmithing, offers him a cup. The girls look on in shock as Tadashi accepts the drink and jokes that, thank the gods, he has even more connections than before. Vulcan says that he has been waiting for this day and everything is to his liking. He is the first to taste the alcohol prepared by the hero and finds it wonderful. Perono remarks that his manners are not befitting him, and Vulcan laughs, replying that drinking is not a high art. At this moment, someone calls out to the hero. The girl asks who these two are. Tadashi explains that they are deities, and that he made sacrifices at the altar, so naturally they went down to share a meal. The girl screams in despair that this is unnatural. The hero understands that the situation is once again turning into chaos that is difficult to contain. The girls are amazed that the gods have actually come. The hero explains that with proper sacrifices, they always appear to taste the food. However, the girls just stare at him in amazement. Kronos turns his attention to the other gods who have just arrived. He scolds Mia and Helga Barrett for showing up with gloomy faces even though Tadashi tried so hard to prepare the treats. Mia, the goddess of wisdom, replies that Kronos had the right to choose whether to come or not. Helga Bara, the god of heroism, says that they do not support specific mortals. Kronos reproaches the god of heroism for stubbornly resisting because of his armor. The god indignantly replies that there is nothing wrong with that. An argument breaks out between the gods, and Tadashi has to step in. He says that the gods work hard too, and should enjoy their meal. The god of heroism tries the first dish, and is delighted with the wonderful taste. The hero explains that it is a soup made from seaweed and seafood. Kronos adds that it is customary for Tadashi's dishes to receive 7 stars from the patron saint of agriculture. Mia looks at the oxtail soup with curiosity and admits that even in ancient times, such exquisite sacrifices were rarely made. Kronos calls the goddess of healing and says that they have prepared a lot for them, so she should try it too. Alicia modestly says she didn't do anything. Tadashi thanks her for the herbs and invites her to taste the food as a token of gratitude. She agrees, although she believes it's the hero's own merit. Tadashi is surprised that the goddess has started eating meat so willingly. He is really surprised that Alicia tastes meat. Suddenly, Islin turns to her, saying that the goddess always takes care of them. Alicia is surprised. Islin asks if she has any concerns. She answers in the negative and adds that Islin's faith in her is priceless. She advises the elf to hold on to this faith. Isolin is delighted to hear such sincere words from the goddess of healing. Kronos asks Tadashi if he is called the monster god Oda. The hero asks again and is surprised. Kronos explains that this god takes care of magical beasts. Tadashi remembers that Kuru brought Mr. Oda, and he completely forgot about it. He hits the dragon figurine and the monster god Oda appears before them. The hero asks what to give him. Kronos says that he eats everything only in large quantities. The hero hands him a piece of food. Oda first tastes it cautiously and then finishes it to the last crumb, which surprises Tadashi. Tadashi asks Mara if she wants more. She says yes. Meanwhile, Vulcan says that the wine is gone and asks for a whole barrel. The hero smiles and promises to bring it all right away. The gods are happily feasting, enjoying food and drink. Tadashi turns to Kronos, suggesting that they hold a wedding ceremony while everyone is together. The god smiles and replies that he is only too happy to do so. The hero emphasizes the importance of marrying in the presence of Kronos and the other deities who support them. He believes that only in this way will the union receive true blessing and recognition from heaven. Kronos says that as the god of agriculture he will grant them a bountiful harvest and many descendants. He adds that he is the perfect match for the role of best man at the wedding, because he can be trusted unconditionally. The ceremony begins, and Tadashi is relieved that at least Mr. Kronos has remained sober. The hero smiles, realizing how important this is for the order of the ceremony. The wedding ritual begins. The hero explains that there is a custom of the first flower on the island, but this is the first time the locals have seen such a marriage ceremony. Everyone watches in amazement. Tadashi tells Kronos that it is time to say the words of the vows and exchange wedding rings and lilies, which symbolize the purity of their union and eternal devotion. Prones notes that polygamy is common in their world, but he has never seen such a wedding ritual. He says that it is very similar to Tadashi himself, which surprises the hero. Prones suggests that they say the words of the oath in the temple, and the hero willingly agrees. But suddenly he hears a voice calling him, and realizes that it is his fiancée. All 7 brides appear before him, asking to accept flowers from them. The embarrassed hero asks them to come up one by one so that he can properly mark each one. He puts the wedding rings on each of the girls in turn. Each of them shines with happiness, receiving this symbolic gift and experiencing a moment of true solemnity. Kronos, moved, declares that this is a truly happy union. He blesses the future descendants with prosperity, and Tadashi sincerely thanks him for such words. Then Kronos reproaches the other gods for not preparing gifts for the newlyweds. Vulcan only shrugs, not understanding what exactly should have been brought. Prones says that it could be a new celestial patron star. Mia responds by denying that the god of agriculture is saying nonsense. Kronos accuses her of a stinginess, to which she replies that if she makes such a gift, it will disrupt the order of the earthly world. Alicia, however, supports Kronos in his intentions. She offers to give each of the brides a star. Islaine, upon hearing this, literally glows with happiness, not believing that such a thing is possible. Mia indignantly says that she is against such gifts. Kronos reminds her that she is the only one who has not tasted the offerings. Mia then turns her gaze to Tadashi. She states that she has ordered the wisest merchants among her followers to be brought as a gift. The hero thanks her sincerely and thinks that they are probably merchants from the borderlands. Suddenly, Eren appears. Tadashi asks her if she received a gift. She replies in the affirmative, saying that she received it from the god of heroism, Mr. Helki Barris. The hero firmly declares that he is not going to have a wedding with Eren. The girl jokingly remarks that his desires have become too free and ambiguous. She adds that she's joking, because it's too early for her to see the hero in that light, but she still says that she'll think about it later whether she wants it or not. Tadashi thinks to himself that he never brought up such a topic and realizes how difficult life would be with 7 wives at once. Suddenly, Iselane says that she is happy to be his wife. The other girls unanimously pick up on these words, saying that they are also filled with joy. The hero replies that he is just as happy as they are. He admits that in his past life he never imagined that he would ever be able to get married. He wonders what it would be like if he had to be alone forever. But now, in this world, everything is completely different. Now he is not alone. The girls whisper in amazement that the king can make the gods themselves come down to earth. Others say that it is only natural since he is blessed and a legend himself. They call Tadashi the most important king recognized by the gods. They add that he is also an incredible cook, so the gods' arrival is entirely justified. The hero thinks that very soon this village will cease to belong to anyone and will become a divine place. He decides that it is better to develop these lands than to live in uncertainty. Thus began the legend of Tadashi, the king of food. The wedding ceremony lasted all night. Iselane even suggested that the girls line up according to their breast size. Lisa timidly asks if her breasts are too small, and if she will be ignored. In response, the other says that everyone has different tastes, and Tadashi himself does not judge based on that alone. The hero, with a sad smile, thinks that the girls are arguing endlessly and will never come to an agreement. Then he says that everyone is tired from the day and it is time to rest. The girls flatly refuse to go to bed, and suddenly Maru turns to Tadashi with an unexpected question, wondering if he has any experience, and the hero becomes embarrassed and confused, asking what exactly she means. Maru explains that none of the others have experience, so problems may arise, and her persistence is so pressing that the hero feels an almost physical force of persuasion, not knowing how to respond politely. Tadashi suggests that Maru tell everyone about it right away, and the girl happily agrees, adding that she needs a partner for face-to-face training, which turns the hero to stone, once again uncertainly clarifying her intention. He breaks down and says he's ashamed, because even if someone could help, there won't be another like her, so such conversations seem too direct for this evening. Maru says she could suggest Ship, a half-beast girl around his age, and Tadashi unwittingly realizes that Maru is trying to carefully bring them together for a practical example. Spike intervenes here and says that he can guide the process as a mentor, assuring the hero that he can consider her invisible, so that no one feels constrained during the training. The hero decides that this is at least a compromise, agrees and hears Maru's request not to overdo it, and rely on her tips, while Spike smiles and politely greets him as a student. The next morning, Tadashi turns to Maru, wanting to hear exactly how she sees the plan going forward, and whether everything went as they had agreed the day before. The girl asks for permission to speak, receives permission and says that everything is fine, even too fine. The test was successful, but now Tadashi is under threat that the hero does not understand at all. Maru raises her voice and warns him that he should be aware of the risk, because if he just relaxes, his partner, without controlling his strength, could inadvertently cause him fatal harm. Tadashi guesses that the reason is the 7-star physical strength that the god of agriculture gave him, and this power can make any careless movement dangerous for both of them. Having recovered, he decides not to stop and still move on to the royal garden, where things await, because responsibility to people is more important than embarrassment. Meanwhile, settlers from the Kambara archipelago are arriving en masse at the Divine Descendant village. The Tadashi kingdom is growing rapidly, and the Frontrunner county learns about this in a rush of prosperity. The action is transferred to the capital of Frontrunner County, a state that arose from 100 warriors and 1 brave man, and later grew into a power with a large army and ambitions. The ruler's only daughter, Matilda von Frontrunner, sits over piles of papers, bored by endless reports. But she doesn't object because her father has entrusted her with important work. Matilda's pensive state is interrupted by the arrival of Eugene von Fontaine, who politely addresses her with a report, and the girl looks up, returning from thoughts to business. He reports disturbing activity on the Kambara archipelago, and Matilda asks if it's a key base for the offensive, and what exactly is going on there. Ojin says that according to evidence, resources do not cover the needs of even half of the archipelago's population, which threatens instability and new rebellions. He adds that excessive taxes can cause people to flee en masse, so the problem should be solved as soon as possible. Otherwise, they will lose control. Matilda dryly orders to leave everything as it is, but when Eugene tries to object, she demands to call the commander-in-chief, who mumbles about the proper respect for such orders. He repeats that there are people left in the country and they need to weigh the decision. But the girl replies that the counterattack plan is almost ready, so there is no point in exploring the islands. Seeing his disappointment, Matilda apologizes for her harshness and retreats to the window, looking out at the city that could pay the price for any mistake she makes. She thinks that defeating the Magic King is now the main goal, and if she misses the right moment to strike, the country could disappear from the map. In her imagination, only one path remains: a direct offensive and unconditional victory, because retreat for her means the slow death of the state. Return to the Divine Village. Tadashi works in the fields and estimates that there are already over 5,000 newcomers, and more people are arriving every day. There is a lot of land, but no matter how you expand the fields, the harvest is still lacking. And at that very moment, someone called the hero by name, breaking him out of his thoughts. It's Isolane on Kururu's back. She's screaming to report the trouble, and Tadashi instantly asks what exactly happened and if help is needed immediately. Isolane explains that new applicants for resettlement have appeared, and the hero cautiously asks what the problem is if the settlements are open. The girl says that whole crowds of gnomes and cat demons are coming one after another, and this is a matter of paramount importance because the scale is impressive. Suddenly, an unfamiliar girl drives up to Kururu, and Tadashi asks Islane to introduce her, wanting to immediately understand who they are and what they have come for. The girl steps forward and looks at the hero defiantly, asking if he is really the same Tadashi the farmer who is called the king of this land here. The hero, surprised, asks who she is, but Islane abruptly intervenes, calling the stranger a traitor and the leader of a caravan of cat demons. Smiling, the girl replies that she is pleased to meet them. She introduces herself as Shinku, the cat-eared leader of the trading caravan. Islane ironically notes that this is a rather strange name for a trading caravan. The hero calmly adds that cat demons belong to the cat race. Shinku explains that it's easier to remember. Their symbol is everyone's favorite cat with ears and a tail. She asks the hero if he's really reborn. She remembers that the goddess Mia introduced him to her believers, because he illuminated this land, built a village, and plowed the fields in an instant, so she thought he was reborn. Shinku asks permission to explore the area for the future. The hero agrees, but says he must meet with the dwarves who have arrived here. Islane offers to take on some of the work and accompanies Shinka while the hero visits the dwarves. Tadashi agrees and says he relies on her. The hero independently jumps onto Kururu's back and, telling them not to wait long for him, sets off to meet the dwarves. Arriving at the place, he does indeed see a group of dwarves in front of him and approaches. One of them calls out to him, asking if he is King Tadashi. The hero answers in the affirmative and asks if he is their leader. The dwarf confirms and introduces himself as Overon, the head of a community of dwarves from the great mines of the Principality of Frontrunner. Tadashi says that fortunately they have enough land, so the dwarves can live here. He promises to restore the trees and food in sufficient quantities, and suggests settling in the mountains near the village's mines. The hero adds that in the mountains, in addition to magical ore, one can even find jewels. Owaran asks in surprise if Tadashi can really tell such an important secret. Tadashi replies that this is one of Mr. Barkin's instructions, so he has no doubt about its truthfulness and trusts Owaran. Hearing this, the dwarf bursts into tears of joy, calls the hero generous, and swears that from now on both of his hands will serve King Tadashi for the rest of his life. The hero notices that he is exaggerating a bit. Tadashi extends his hand to Owaran and suggests that they head to the mines as soon as possible, as they are now comrades in arms. The dwarf shakes his hand tightly and says that he will stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The hero thinks that now a village with mines will appear in the north, which will belong to Owaran and other dwarves, and he will supply them with all the necessary products. In the south, on the island of Kanbar, settlers will appear, thousands of people, and the cat demons have already begun preparations to create an international trading port. It was also decided to build a fortress by the river in the center of each location, which would become the base for the new kingdom. Shinku reports that the trade is going according to plan, but emphasizes that the export of magical iron and steel is strictly prohibited. Tadashi wonders why they can't be exported. The girl explains that the county is preparing for war, and weapons made of magical iron and steel will be a decisive advantage for their country. Islane asks what war they are talking about. Shinku replies that allowing so many people to move would effectively be a declaration of war. Islane declares that she and her people will leave the island once they have paid their debts. She adds that this land was originally intended for those who could not live in the principality, so it will not even notice the change. Shinku confirms, calling her words true, since the inhabitants of Kanbar Island have almost disappeared and are still fleeing from there. She adds contemptuously that the top of the county are fools themselves. Still, Shinku says he will prepare a counterattack strategy, taking into account various possibilities. Tadashi replies that he is relying on her because he himself understands nothing about military affairs. Shinku confidently says that he can rely on her, and Owaran adds that the dwarves will do everything they can for their king. Islane assures that this time neither the elves nor the demi-humans from the island will betray them, as happened before. Shinku mockingly scares her, saying that if they attack first, they will immediately flee to the nearest fishing village. Eren encourages the girl, saying that she herself is capable of being brave. Shinku sarcastically replies that then he wants to hear the real plan from her. The hero tries to break them up. He says he's waiting for ideas from both. Shinku concludes that even if the county's army is strong, a disciplined and clear attack can turn the tide of battle in their favor. She says that the outcome of the battle will depend solely on Tadashi's strength, but the hero is surprised and asks what exactly she is talking about, not understanding the meaning of her hint. The girl explains that his divine power is bestowed by heaven, and Shinku has heard that it is this power that can cleanse all these lands of filth and darkness. The hero admits that he doubts his own ability to fully wield such power, and is convinced that his strength may not be enough for the battle. Shinku turns to Tadashi, asking him not to belittle himself. She reminds him that his power has already brought prosperity to these lands, and the hero himself looks at her in confusion. Tadashi replies that he will think about her words, realizing that he is ready to use all his power to protect his loved ones because he is the king, and his duty is to protect the people. The plot moves to Frontrunner County, to the Palace of the Century. Matilda screams indignantly upon learning that a large mine, which was the main hope of their country, has been put into operation. She is informed that workers have begun to disappear one by one without a trace. She does not understand the reasons and realizes that without weapons production, their army is doomed. Suddenly, Eugene appears and brings something to Matilda with an apology. She asks what it is, and he replies that it is related to the events that have taken place. Eugene says that these mushrooms were collected on the border of Gambol Island. They don't grow in such quantities on their land. The girl tastes the mushroom, not understanding the hint. Ogun explains what this means. People fled to more fertile lands. However, Matilda objects, stating that places like their dreamland simply do not exist. Ogun continues and reports the results of the investigation. A new kingdom has appeared on the border, which could become a refuge for the missing. Matilda says she has heard about these border areas, which have long since become uninhabitable, and she does not believe that people could have left their country and fled there. She is irritated that the escape occurred just before the Demon Kingdom's counterattack. The girl asks who can handle this task. Suddenly, a voice is heard from behind the door. General of the Heavenly Stars, Graham, the owner of the magic sword and a 4-star commander, enters. He asks for permission to destroy the new kingdom. Matilda asks Eugene if she should give permission, but he abruptly refuses and reminds her of the dangers of his methods. He asks to remember the events on the island of Kanbar, when Graham's detachment of 100 fighters arbitrarily attacked the beastmen and burned down an entire village. The girl replies that she is busy with preparations, so she doesn't see a problem if Graham can take over. The general cynically says that she should have realized this earlier. Eugene tries to argue, but Matilda is adamant. She announces that she relies on Graham's squad, and he looks on in shock at her decision. Matilda orders Graham not to let her down this time. With a smile, he promises to live up to her expectations. Graham's squad heads to the island. One of the fighters says that the rumors are true. Graham confirms. All the elves, beastmen, and others have already moved to the borderlands. He adds that if they try to run away from them, it will be their fatal mistake, because he plans to once again get rich off of other people's misfortune. Graham orders his men to loot as much as they can, leaving himself the task of extracting the necessary information from enemy territory. The soldiers obey, and he plans a fun after-work party. They enter the village and are surprised to find it completely empty. One warrior says that the elves and beastmen have disappeared in an unknown direction. Suddenly, a noise comes from the side. Demonic beasts rush towards the detachment. The soldiers are shocked and do not understand what is happening. The soldiers shout to disperse. One of them, in a panic, says that some simple bird is pecking at his hand, but it doesn't look natural at all. Graham desperately fends off the beast's attacks and shouts to the warriors to stay alert. He says that these are not ordinary creatures, but A-rank demonic cows and chickens, and orders all 5 to fight. He is surprised that these demons are behaving so aggressively. Graham realizes that he was too safe, and now he must act more cautiously in these lands. Shinku, Eren, and Tadashi observe the events from the bushes. Shinku says that by using demonic animals, they are reducing the enemy's strength, just as Eren predicted. Shinku asks Eren why she has been silent for so long. Unexpectedly, the girl turns to Tadashi with a request to leave the soldiers for her and Shinku. The hero asks if she really wants to attack. Eren says she will not forgive them for destroying the village. She wants revenge and wants to kill the invaders. Tadashi tries to calm her down, but the girl is determined. It must be done now or never. The girl persistently asks the hero to leave quickly, and Tadashi realizes that a fight is inevitable. She rushes forward, thanking him for the permission to attack, while a squad of beastmen rushes straight at the enemies with a fierce cry. The beastmen roar furiously into battle, their footsteps echoing with thunder. Graham turns sharply, notices the attack, and is about to flee when suddenly someone loudly calls his name. The ruler of the beastmen appears before him, and the man recognizes her immediately. Without wasting a moment, the girl raises her sword and charges swiftly. Graham's eyes widen in surprise, noticing her strange blade. He smiles cynically and says that Eren has good taste because he fights with a magic sword. However, hatred burns in the girl's eyes, because it was this executioner who burned down her native village. Although Graham smiles cheekily again. He roars that this time Eren will burn in the flames and casts a sulfuric acid spell on his sword. With a sinister swing, he attacks, but the girl deftly dodges, sending the enemy into a stupor. Graham doesn't understand how she could have escaped his spell. The girl says with cold confidence that he won't dare humiliate her again. She claims that thanks to Tadashi, she has become a 4-star warrior. Graham wonders why the sulfuric acid doesn't harm her body. Eren, without delay, attacks again. Her blows fall one after another, and finally she breaks his sword, after which she mercilessly pierces her opponent's chest. Having driven the blade into the enemy's body, the girl says through her teeth that this blow is for Cornell. Graham looks at her in horror, choking from pain and coughing, losing strength. Gritting his teeth, Eren shouts that it's time for Graham to leave this world. He looks up, trying to insult her one last time, but she decisively pulls the sword from his chest. The girl freezes, lowering her blade in confusion. And just then Tadashi approaches her. He quietly asks if she's okay, and Eren turns around and says in a trembling voice that she was able to do it. The hero looks her straight in the eye and seriously confirms that she has indeed done it. He adds that this victory is theirs together, and that they won this battle together. The action moves to the Principality of Frontrunner, within the walls of the Century Castle. Matilda receives news of the defeat of Graham's detachment, but refuses to believe that the general himself, the owner of the demon sword, died. Ojan replies that this is exactly what happened. He explains that according to the few soldiers who miraculously survived, the squad was attacked by demonic beasts and beastmen. The girl asks again, not believing her ears. She asks if the Border Kingdom really uses demonic animals in battle. Ojan admits that they underestimated the enemy. Matilda gets annoyed, clenching her fists. However, he soon realizes that even such news is extremely important. Ojan reports that they are gathering new information from refugees and traders who are leaving the country, and one of them has come in a letter from the kingdom of Tadashi. Matilda unfolds the message. Ojan adds that it deals with several issues they wish to discuss with the principality, among them the problem of the captured soldiers. Matilda firmly declares that she will go personally to discuss everything. Ojan doubtfully asks if she can handle it on her own. The girl replies that as a squad commander, she has no right to leave the members of the order who have been captured. Her voice is filled with unwavering confidence. Ojan looks at her in surprise, but eventually agrees and says that he will begin all the necessary preparations for the journey. Matilda sadly acknowledges that the glorious Order of the Celestial Dawn has suffered a brutal defeat at the hands of beasts and beastmen. She says it was a mistake to underestimate the situation and leave it to its fate. Ojan warns her against making any new hasty decisions, and asks her not to repeat her mistakes. However, the girl sharply replies that she is no longer a child to be taught. With clenched fists, Matilda stands stubbornly, while Ojan sternly reminds her that sometimes even a leader must stop and soberly assess the situation. The girl objects, saying that they cannot waste time now. She orders to prepare a campaign to the Kambala Islands. 2,000 knights and 20,000 legionnaires must go according to plan. Matilda adds that she will take another 1,000 horsemen with her, and Ojan declares that he will accompany her to the negotiations. She curtly agrees. Arriving on the island, everyone is surprised by what kind of ports Tadashi's kingdom is building. They enter the pier, and Matilda suspiciously asks where they got so much money. Ojan replies that they are supported by the Shinku Trading Company, as well as the Cartier firm, under the blessing of the God of Wisdom. Matilda carefully inspects the harbor and notices that there are no warships or large detachments. She says that despite all their wealth, their military strength seems meager. Ojan suggests that perhaps they are hiding their true potential. Munchin reminds Tadashi's kingdom that there are powerful demonic beasts from the borderlands on its side. He adds that he has warned Matilda many times to never let her guard down. The girl angrily replies that she knows that herself. But suddenly there is a greeting from behind. They look around and see Tadashi, who politely asks if they have arrived as representatives of the principality. Matilda asks who he is. The hero calmly introduces himself. He is Ono Tadashi, an ordinary farmer by profession, but at the same time the king of this country. The girl is stunned that an ordinary person could cause such chaos, and Ogun leans towards Matilda and points to the hero's hand. He whispers that 9 stars of blessing shine on his palm. Tadashi admits that he often hears that this is strange, since he received 7 stars in farming, blacksmithing, and heroism. Matilda refuses to believe that he really has so many stars. Eugene insists that she will have to accept it. She exclaims indignantly that she is being asked to believe in the fiction of multiple blessings. Eugene reminds her that it is impossible to build such a rich country on neglected lands, and only the blessing of the god of agriculture can explain it. But his words only fuel Matilda's anger even more. Tadashi turns the conversation back to peace negotiations. Shinku explains that their demand is simple. They will release the captured knights and forget about the invasion if the principality acknowledges their existence and does not interfere in their affairs. Matilda considers this impertinence, reminding her that the heroes took 10,000 of her people. Shinku sharply replies that this is exactly what happens when a principality declines. Tadashi reminds him that the principality is short of food. He offers to sell her cheaper through trade routes, but Matilda refuses. Then the hero directly asks what they need most. Matilda says that above all she wants to get her people and masters back, and also demands that the beastmen and elves be returned to the island. The dwarves' leader replies that they came to Tadashi voluntarily, so they will decide for themselves who to serve. The elves cling to the hero. They declare that they have become Tadashi's wives and now belong only to him. Aaron adds that Matilda no longer has any power over them. An irritated Matilda says that there is a legitimate ruler, and she doesn't care about their choice. She offers to become a vassal of the principality in exchange for protection from the demon lord's threat. Aaron indignantly replies that they cannot agree to such conditions, because the principality has not fulfilled its obligations for a long time. To this, Matilda coldly says that if they refuse to accept her offer, she will simply return home. Matilda and Ogun return to the principality. Ogun tries to start a conversation, but the girl interrupts him, stating that everything has turned out even better than she expected, and now they must immediately prepare the army's crossing to the island of Komba. She says that their troops are attacking Tadashi's kingdom right now. Ogun, shocked, asks if they are really going to use military force against the demon state. He reminds them that they do not know the true military strength of the Tadashi kingdom. Ogun emphasizes that they have no reliable information, and starting a war in such a situation is a gross violation of military principles. Matilda replies that this is why they must launch a surprise attack. She adds that the enemy already has at least 10,000 demonic beasts, and waiting for more would be suicide. She says they will have to fight both the demon kingdom and Tadashi's kingdom at the same time. This is not a game at all, but there is no choice. Matilda asks Ogun if he has seen those fertile lands. She says that if everything works out, they will easily double their army, and then victory over the Demon King's forces will be theirs. Eugene asks if she really wants to put the survival of the principality on the line. Matilda replies that in their situation, risk is the only way to survive. She declares that as the commander-in-chief of the principality's army, head of the Knight's Order, and representative of the prince, she is ordering a surprise attack on Tadashi's kingdom. Matilda emphasizes that if they do not challenge, they will only worsen their situation in these lands. Ogun bows his head and says that he understands her, and out of respect he will carry out the order. The story moves to the island of Kanbar. A soldier approaches Ogun and informs him that they have repelled an attack by demonic beasts. He remarks that it was not easy. In the end, most of the monsters were destroyed. No matter how strong the demons were, an army of 20,000 fighters proved invincible. Eugene wonders if it is time to end Lady Matilda's invasion of the port. He orders a soldier to board a ship and sail to Lady Matilde with a report. The order is immediately carried out. Eugene thinks that there is plenty of food in the city, and the supply is never ending. Now all he can do is pray that the girl doesn't make a fatal mistake. He reports to Matilda that the coastline is completely occupied, and the attack of the demonic creatures has been successfully repelled. The girl confidently says that she expected nothing less from him, and calls it a great victory. Ogun looks at her intently. He asks why not stop there. Matilda is confused and doesn't understand what he's talking about. Eugene says they only encountered resistance from demonic beasts. He suggests that the inhabitants had been evacuated inland, and the enemy had guessed their surprise attack. Matilda realizes that even Eugene failed to make a surprise attack. He reports that a fortress has been built on the River of Sorrows, and that the enemy's main base may be there. The girl excitedly exclaims that Tadashi must be there too. She wants to attack immediately, but Ogun tries to restrain her, urging caution. Matilda looks the warrior straight in the eye and declares that the greatest treasure of these lands is the very man they are looking for. She says that it was thanks to him that the fertile fields were created, and that is why she wants to capture him alive. Ojin objects, because he has 9 stars of blessing. Matilda sharply replies that even if they overcome his strength, without the blessing of agriculture they will not be able to compete. Their military power is not enough. She adds that she will not lose her vigilance and will fight with all her might. Ocean replies that she will go negotiate with King Tadashi, otherwise they will lose to the Demon King. He believes that victory is possible now, but if they exhaust themselves by seizing these lands, they will not be able to resist in the war with the demon. Matilda angrily reproaches him for saying that he himself spoke of the many traps. He cannot go alone. He coldly replies that he will go even to his death. He reasons that if the main army is destroyed in one blow, then the principality is doomed. The girl objects, claiming that there may be no traps at all. Ojin rudely reminds her that her own teachings say not to do what a whim dictates. Matilda shouts at him, accusing him of arrogance. He interrupts, stating that a large number of enemies is precisely the desired result. She indignantly shouts his name. Matilda decides that a small number of soldiers are enough to hold the territory. She wants to throw her entire army to destroy Rika's castle. This is her final order. The army of the principality begins a furious attack. The hero, remembering past events, guesses that this will happen. But there are a few inhabitants left in the port who did not have time to escape. Tadashi hopes that the prophecy will not come true. But suddenly, Eren on Kuru flies up to him and reports that there are over 200,000 enemies, of which only 3,000 are warriors. All the ships approach the island. Shinku, who sold information about the principality's army to the heroes, has developed a cunning plan, but she is not confident of victory either. Tadashi reflects that the castle, although called the Royal Castle, is actually just a wall of magical steel built around a fort. Suddenly Shinku approaches him and asks what he is doing. The hero remembers her words that he is capable of great deeds and thinks about how to protect everyone. He understands that he will not allow the principality to destroy his villages, cities, and the entire country that he built with his own hands. Now he decides to give all his strength to preserve what he has created. Shinku looks at him approvingly and, coming closer, suddenly leans down. She kisses him, then steps back and says that if he wins this war, she will let him take her as his wife. The hero looks at her embarrassedly and says that the girl really always wanted this. She replies that the place for the confession was chosen correctly. Tadashi wonders if he shouldn't have said the words before the kiss, but hears that he would have refused. The hero smiles and thanks her for being able to cheer him up, even by joking. Shinku admits that it was. The hero concentrates and thinks that he has come this far thanks to the friends he met in the new world. He remembers the elf Eyes, the beast Eren, the dwarf Oberon, the cat Sinka, Fenrir Karura, all who became his relatives. Suddenly, Kronos' words about the river of sorrows being poisoned with a deadly poison come to mind. But with the blessing of agriculture, he is able to purify the water and the land. The hero remembers how he once received such power and purified a river in which no one could live. Dipping his hand into the water, he begins the purification with a blessing. Meanwhile, an alarm is raised on the enemy ship. Eugene and Matilda run out of the cabin, hearing screams. They are told that the bottom is leaking and a giant fish is jumping onto the deck. A stunned Matilda asks what kind of monster it is. Ogun explains that it is a fierce demonic creature, a devil salmon that lives in poisoned rivers. The girl says he looks like a creature from legends and asks why he appeared here. Ogun guesses that it could be Tadashi's power and thinks anxiously about the army.